Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
Guess what? I'm a witch.
Guess what? I'm a podcast fan.
More or less embarrassing than being a Clippers fan? Who can say?
At this day and age, I mean, it's the equivalent. I think that would be the joke at this point, right? If this movie were made tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And this feels like a movie that could very much be made tomorrow.
Of course. The people are demanding it. I'm amazed it hasn't happened already. Make this exact movie again.
But also, it feels timeless. It feels like this pitch would work in any era.
Well, the jokes are just, they're well-written jokes. They just work. They could work in any decade, any year.
They just work. It's classic comedy. And you know, a key to comedy usually is clarity, right?
Uh-huh.
And this movie is crystal clear. You understand exactly what it's going for at every moment.
Yes. I've got to say, I think, and I was saying this off mic, comedy, sure, there's some yucks in this movie, but this is just one of the hottest movies of the 2000s. This movie is just so damn steamy.
Well, it's one of those things where the movie kind of underperformed at the box office. I think it was because they were selling the comedy rather than the sexual chemistry.
I think the outrageous sexual chemistry of this movie made people uncomfortable.
Well,
it was like, I am curious yellow.
Yes.
You have Nicole Kidman.
Of course.
And she's been in Moulin Rouge with Ewan McGregor, and the chemistry, it's really one of the generation's best romances, but it really just pales in comparison to this. That's what it is.
Yes, your point is, at this point in time, Nicole Kidman is known for more of sort of a musical comedy bent. To
Yes.
view her as a sexual object in a movie is difficult. And Farrell is coming in here, who famously is a very physical actor, shows a lot of skin, and he's like, Nicole, I'm going to show you. Yeah, right. I'm going to show you how to make the screen sizzle.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sizzler. This is a sizzler.
It's
this would be my top 10 sizzlers.
Well, as a heterosexual woman, I say I've never been more attracted to a character than the unexplained, deeply unpleasant Jack, our protagonist of this film.
Jack Wyatt.
So, I mean, you're lobbing it up perfectly, Dana. But today, of course, we're talking about the movie Bewitched, about a man trying his hardest to make sure that the witch on Bewitched does not become the primary character. A movie which also does the same.
Yes, you're right. It's a fair point. Right. The movie inadvertently does that.
Yes.
Or advertently. I don't know. This is like 4 movies crammed into 100 minutes, too.
I think it's more like 10 movies crammed into 100 minutes. I lost track at a certain point, but I think it's about 10.
When we were an hour in, Forky was like, wait, does he know she's a witch yet? And I was like, no. And she's like, they still got to deal with that? Like, that's going to be a whole other thing?
There are 3 reveals where it's like, he backstabbed her. She's secretly a witch. There's so many second act switches. But for me,
one of them is literally undone. There's a 15-minute segment of the movie that is like edit
irrelevant.
Undo. Yes.
I have to say, when she had a real Aunt Clara, I lost it. I was furious at the film.
Look, we're champing at the bit. We got to get into this. There's too much to talk about. It's rare we have a movie where we're just like, I don't know, like clear out the schedules. We might not be able to get this in 4 hours. Like there's too much to crack into in this movie.
Griffin, but I have a hard out in 2.5 hours.
Okay, well, you're going to have to push that back. I'm sorry. This is officially going to be our longest episode ever. Hi, everybody. I'm Griffin Newman.
I'm David Sims.
And this is Blank Check with Griffin and David. It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they... I'm trying to wiggle my nose. It doesn't...
Yeah, it's more of a chin waggle, like I said. But
Now, what I want to say is I also think that what Nicole Kidman is doing is more of a chin waggle, especially if you look at Elizabeth Montgomery in the original show. The magic trick of it was her nose seems to wiggle without the rest of her face moving that much. And on Nicole Kidman, you could see the effort. And so much of the movie is based around people seeing her do the nose thing and going, oh my God, how do you do that? I can't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there being stories about how she worked on the nose for like 2 years.
She wiggles her face. It's not that crazy.
It's like she's trying to get a booger out without picking her nose. That's what it looks like, right?
Well put.
Thank you.
Here, wait, I want to watch Elizabeth Montgomery to see. Because, like, you know,
She's
the
so
show
good. She's so
had the
cute.
cartoon.
Yes, right.
And so, you know, the cartoon wiggles its nose as well. And obviously that's very prominent nose wiggling.
But she does when she does it live action.
She's wiggling her damn cheeks. That's what she's doing.
Also, if you're magic, you should have the ability just to isolate your nose. That could be part of your magic.
Did they live in another realm? What are the rules of witches?
Okay,
There are no rules.
This is a miniseries on the films of Nora Ephron. It's called You've Got Podcast. And sometimes when we announce a director, people go, I don't get it. What's the arc? That's just like they made a lot of hit comedies. Like, what is that? Here's the thing about Nora Ephron. Aside from the fact that her successful movies are very much worth talking about for the influence they had and the weirdness of how they came to be, she's got some big swings and some big bounces. Now, the other bounces, I feel like her movies are people are just like, what?
People didn't like the movies.
Right. But also they just like did not even register. This
Right,
is like...
right. That's the movie came out and people were like, no, thank you, not for me.
Right.
And
This
that
is
was
like
the bounce.
big pre-existing IP. Two big movie stars kind of at their peak moment. Huge budget, big summer release.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this one, when you explain Mixed Nuts to people, people say, I can't believe that exists. I've never heard of it. When you explain Bewitched to people, they go, oh, right, I forgot that existed, but also that's what that fucking movie is about? Actually?
They spent practically 40 years trying to crack a Bewitched movie, and that's what we got eventually.
Look, I mean, Dana, we were talking...
Bewitched is high concept. The sitcom. Like,
Huge
it's
concept.
ready to be a movie.
It's high concept enough. You could have just, at the end of this movie, they tease that the couple is now becoming bewitched. And I just wrote in my notes, I would watch that movie. Let me just watch that.
Yeah.
I
You got
like
Richard
Bewitched.
Kind and Sedaris. Like, that sounds fun. Let's have some witch antics.
Okay, I'm going to speed through some things here. But our guest today... for the Noble Blood podcast, is there a name for the romantic comedy podcast?
It's not. Who knows when it's going to come out? So, yeah.
Okay.
Just Noble Blood.
And Untitled, Dana Schwartz, romantic comedy podcast. It's Dana Schwartz, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Of course. Now, you had seen this movie before.
Yeah, I was talking about it. I was a big Bewitched fan growing up. Like, my mom had watched it growing up, so she had all the DVDs. I think they were maybe they were VHS, whatever. But I watched old Bewitched. I had multiple seasons. I was a big old school Bewitched fan, and I distinctly remember going to the theater to see this movie with my mom, and I remember liking it, and I like enjoyed it. And this was the first moment where but I was like 11 or 12. Just for context. So I was like a 12-year-old going to see this movie, and I liked it. I was like, oh, it has the cadence and look of a movie. The same way, some things have cadence
It's a
and
movie.
look. It's a movie. And
Yeah.
I remember this was the first movie where I saw like reviews or like Rotten Tomatoes, and it got obviously savaged for very good reason. And this was the first time as a young person I was like, oh, movies that I like or thought were good maybe aren't good.
Yeah. Yes.
And so now I rewatched this movie as an adult, and I was like, oh, this movie is a disaster.
I thought I had seen this movie. I had a false memory of seeing this movie. My sister, past and future guest Romley Newman, huge classic sitcom fan, mostly watched classic sitcoms as a young child because she doesn't, especially at a young age, did not like conflict.
Right.
She liked high concept, charm comedy
Everything's
stuff.
wrapped up in 22 minutes. Very
Right.
easy.
Anything with too much of a conflict would stress her out, and she didn't like watching shows with kids in them. So she watched a lot of classic sitcoms, and Bewitched was one of her favorites. My mom took her to see it, and I thought I had seen this movie because my mom and Romley, who must have been 7 at the time, explained it to me in depth.
Sure.
And it was seared into my brain as I can't believe those things happen in this movie.
Well, I This movie came out in 2005. I was working at the Boston Phoenix. I was a little college intern boy. And I lived in Boston. I didn't have many friends, so I would go see movies all the fucking time by myself. And so I saw Bewitched by myself. I guess mostly probably out of boredom, but also like I was all in on Will Ferrell. So I think I was probably just like, well, maybe he's gonna, he'll be good. I don't know. The advertising was all Will Ferrell.
All Will Ferrell.
Him going like Sherpa, all that.
Yeah.
Like the trailer is all Ferrell.
Hummus.
The height of comedy is saying hummus with a little huh on it.
That's such
Hummus.
a 2005 joke. Is just, what if I pronounce something correctly?
Right. And this is his big flop year. We're going to talk about it.
Well, because I was going to say, I was all in on him, and it's going to have to be a lot of career context on Ferrell, who I feel like we haven't really talked about before. Kidman's come up before, right?
Yeah, but, we can talk Kidman. But Kidman, there's career context on both of these that are kind of crucial.
This movie just made me feel so bad for Nicole Kidman. I think any
Agreed.
gorgeous woman who has starred in movies where her romantic lead was Tom Cruise and Ewan McGregor should never have to pretend to be attracted to Will Ferrell.
And certainly not with this
In this character.
with
He's
this
probably a
Will
lovely man, whatever. In this context.
I'm trying to even figure out just how to organize this.
I'm going to start.
So overflowing. Okay.
I'm going to start with the first billed actor in this film, Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
And the reason she's first billed is this is 3 years removed from an Oscar win for The Hours. She's
Which-
2 years when he's.
Let's say because of the time that movies take to get made, 3 years is where you really see the full force test of someone's power post-Oscar win. It's like these are the
Exactly.
projects that they're signing on to right after the Oscar that go through a full incubation period, development. Right.
That's exactly what I want to talk about. Because the year after the 2003, the year after The Hours, she's in the Human Stain supporting role, whatever.
Shot before. Right.
And Cold Mountain, which is, big collaboration with Anthony Minghella.
Yeah.
Obviously a big deal movie.
But also was in the works before she won the Oscar. Yeah.
Right. But so I would say that her big sort of chunk post-Oscar is this two-pronged thing where she is pursuing these very daring projects with interesting directors.
Dogville.
Dogville, Birth, Fur, which didn't hit, but, still counts, right? That's sort of her being like, I will use my clout to make interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Like, box office be damned. All of that is interesting.
Yeah.
And then you've got Hollywood being like, all right, Nicole, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna find all kinds of great stuff for you. Like, don't you worry. The Hollywood machine is whirring away. We're gonna reboot the Stepford Wives for you. We're political thriller. You can do The Interpreter. You can do Bewitched. Like, Hollywood is throwing all this garbage at her because they're like, you're like a sort of scary robot lady. Like, that seems to be what they think of her.
Well, there's this thing that happens, and I feel like it's now finally dissipated a little bit, probably largely because of TV and actors being less precious about their careers. But there was a thing that existed for a very long time that was like, Tom Hanks is the best case scenario. Here's a guy who's like a star, but then he wins the Oscar. It's his anointment. And then for a decade, he is bulletproof. Like, this is the moment where you graduate to being just like guaranteed money in the bank, America's favorite movie star. And you get to unlock new rooms.
That also happens way more if you're a man. I feel like women
100%.
winning the Oscar is not always good for the woman.
And also, Nicole Kidman, not only is she a woman, but she's in her mid-30s at this point. And I feel like, she already had her first career wave where she's in Batman and she's in... Practical Man, right? Like, like she, and so like she's in her 30s. She's a woman in her 30s, and Hollywood is just like baffled. They're like, let's reboot anything that ever had a woman in it. I don't know.
Well, David, as you can tell from this movie's multiple audition scenes, a 30-year-old unknown actress, Hollywood has none of those. There are no good actresses in Hollywood who are 30 years old.
Yes, absolutely not. No, I mean, there's a reason they don't work. It's on them. Absolutely. And I want to say that unequivocally. It is that thing. It's like what I think of it specifically as is here's like an actress who's very famous and is like beloved but is not necessarily like a solo, like classical movie star box office draw. Usually because they're a little more interesting as an actor than that. And then after that, Hollywood is always like, we need to find some movie we can overpay you for. Like, there has to be some movie where we can pay you $15 to $20 million to just put you on a poster and have it be money in the bank. And it's almost always a mistake like this. It's like Catwoman, it's Aeon Flux. It's that kind of like, you're very, very famous, but now we're going to put everything on you. The idea of Nicole Kidman is a Stepford wife. Halle Berry is Catwoman. Like, that's it, you know? Let's find the property to put you in.
On our Happy Feet episode, we discussed her biggest hits, and they're all movies that she has supporting roles in. So like Aquaman, Happy Feet, Batman Forever, The Upside, Just Go With It.
Right.
Those are her biggest 5 hits. Her biggest hit as a star is The Others, which is sort of like an organic hit. It hit because it was a good movie.
But that's like her only...
a zag, you know, it was like a ghost story when Hollywood didn't have a lot of... You know what I mean?
That's her only solo $100 million movie, right?
I think because Cold Mountain is kind of a trio movie, I guess. Certainly.
Did that hit 100? Did it end up at like 98?
It's like 95.
Yeah.
None of these movies hit 100. The
As
others
a
hit
box
96.
office nerd, doesn't it stress you out when movies get that close to 100?
Yes.
I hate it.
Didn't Moulin Rouge do okay at the box office?
Really
Moulin
well
Rouge
overseas.
Did well overseas and did okay considering the movie that it was.
Yes.
But it made 57 domestic. It was more of a cult thing from the beginning. Like
And also like a huge DVD movie. Like at a moment that was peak DVD. It comes out in like May, and by the time it's nominated for Best Picture, it's like exploding on DVD. It had the sort of leg up on everyone else.
Kidman's best movies are either things like Moulin Rouge and The Eyes Wide Shut, like which are like big quote unquote movies, but that are weird and are sort of kind of daring and unusual, or her smaller films where she's working with, you know, auteurs like Birth or.
But she works best in a somewhat transgressive zone. There is this weird aspect to Nicole Kidman where it's like, not only is she best there, but it seems like that's the stuff she likes the most.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I interviewed Karen Kusama for Destroyer, and she, like, had nothing but, like, she was just overflowing with praise for Nicole Kidman's process. Like, not just like, oh, she's a nice lady.
I've heard
like,
the
she
same
was
thing,
just
that she's, like,
with
an incredibly serious, committed actor. Like, she is one of those people who just, like, takes it really seriously as a craft and is not that engaged with sort of movie star bullshit. But
I love her, but she does need the right thing.
It's very weird to have this and Stepford Wives back to back.
Yeah.
I think she is capable of being funny. I mean, certainly one of her best performances ever is To Die For, but that's a very different strain of comedy.
But that's right. She's funny in that, but it is sort of like an actor-y kind of funny.
She's funny because she's so serious. She's taking that role so seriously.
Has she ever been funny? Now I am thinking about this.
She's similarly funny in Eyes Wide Shut in the same way. Not exclusively
amazing
funny.
in Eyes Wide Shut,
yes.
but like because I haven't seen like Just Go With It.
To Die For is a comedic role, though. You know what I mean? Like that is a role that
she won
she's very
the Golden
funny
Globe.
in that.
Actress in a comedy.
I would say I think she's far better in Stepford Wives than she is in this. I think Stepford Wives, neither of these movies are her fault, but her performance doesn't work in this. In Stepford Wives, I think she does what she's asked to do incredibly well.
In Stepford Wives, she has a character. Her character has a place where she starts and a place where she goes. In this, they just like sort of plug her in. It's so weird.
Right. I don't think this movie is her fault, but she is god awful in this.
She's
movie.
awful in this.
It is
awful
a terrible.
0%.
It's not really her fault.
0% her
as
fault.
you say, I don't know what her character is. She's playing. This character's written like she's 12 years old,
like a child,
or an alien, or a robot. It makes no sense.
But not just a 12-year-old, a dumb 12-year-old.
Yeah, who's never been outside.
This movie needs a prologue that explains that she like lives in a witchy dimension where technology doesn't
This
exist.
movie needs some Lady in the Water shit where it like, there's like a narrator who's like, in the, since time immemorial, witches have, and then lay it out for me, baby.
But also then they're very inconsistent. Like then she doesn't know how credit cards work, and then she's really good at things, and then about 30 minutes into the movie, they decide that she knows everything and is very smart and has been in the world before.
But here's another thing. Like, spoiler alerts, everyone else we find out is a witch in this movie seems a lot more comfortable existing in the human world, which raises the question, is she not from a human world? They try to explain at the end, if you leave, you can't come back for 100 years, but then she goes, that's not true. I don't know what the mythology of this movie is.
And Michael Caine clearly fucks mortal women all the time.
Right.
All the
Like,
time.
it either needs a prologue explaining that she's from, like, Brigadoon, or it needs to be witches coexist among us silently. She
They
gets
just don't talk
everything.
about
She's a normal human being. She just has magic powers.
I just glom the Sabrina the Teenage Witch world onto this movie. That's how I have to think about it. Where it's like, witches can live in our world, but there is also a witch realm that they can also live in. They can move between them. And it's really neither here nor there what they decide to do.
But I'm pretty sure in the original Bewitched, there wasn't a witch realm.
Correct. It
It was just
definitely
people,
like,
witches live among us,
Right.
and that's a thing. They know
In
how
secret.
credit cards work because they live in our world. They just are magic and everything works for them.
we have so much to talk about. I want to get through Farrell so that we can get to, because I have
Okay.
an article. I found a really good resource about the
Okay.
development history of this movie.
So
I cannot wait.
Will Ferrell, obviously an SNL star.
Now, here's my big question before we run through the films in chronology. Has any movie star had their success so directly tied to one collaborator as Will Ferrell in terms of the discrepancy between the good movies and the bad movies?
I know what you mean, right? Because it would be like if Will Ferrell's not working with Adam McKay, it's a write-off.
It's almost always a red flag. And there are exceptions. There are ones that are hits, but that
The
haven't
thing is, I would
necessarily
say
aged
no
super well.
because his emergence is not tied to.
That's what's
Adam McKay.
crazy. But
Yeah.
once he makes Anchorman, it's like you can tell whether the movie is going to be good or not. Elf is right
Elf is
before
the
Anchorman.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's before it. He has a good run, working up from character actor to movie star, and then once he makes his first McKay movie, it is like A, most of the non-McKay movies flop. B, the non-McKay movies that succeed at the time have not aged perfectly well. I'm not saying they've aged poorly, but people don't think about them.
100%. So here's Will Ferrell. He's on SNL, obviously. It's very funny.
Yeah.
I assume you guys agree that Will Ferrell has the capacity to be a tremendously funny comedian.
Sketch
actor.
He is a perfect sketch comedian. I'm not saying that in a backhanded way against his movie career. He is just one of those people who is so perfectly suited for sketch
He's
comedy.
He throws
if he's
his
in
whole
a-
body into it.
Yes, if he's in a thing, you're immediately like, I want to know what he is doing.
He also does funny faces. Like, you
Yes,
know, there's
great
like people
funny
like Jim
faces.
Carrey that just know how to do a funny face. Will Ferrell can do a funny face.
But in a way, unlike Jim Carrey, it feels like, oh, there's something just inherently funny about this guy. Like when Jim Carrey does a serious interview, you're like, oh, wow, Jim Carrey's really drained of all comedic energy here, you know?
Right.
But when Will Ferrell is serious, there's still something funny about him. It's just like
it's a problem.
he's got a perfect body for comedy. His
Yes.
eyes are so beady. His height is funny. Like everything about him is just
But it's the thing
inherently-
about Downhill. Just was it this year? Downhill, where like they're like, oh God, you know this. It's about this guy who's just sort of exposed as a bit of a buffoon, like he sees himself as. And I'm like, you cannot cast Will Ferrell for this. This is malpractice.
And this movie has the exact same problem, which is just like, you know this guy's a buffoon and you know he's going to fucking lose it. There's
Yes,
no
it's
tension
ridiculous.
to will he or won't he in a Will
It's
Ferrell
ev-
movie.
I would argue it's even more ridiculous in 2020. In 2005, I suppose Hollywood's still trying to be like, can he play a regular guy?
Right.
You know, like the.
Well, because
anyway.
this is the other thing is, as much as we're saying he's a perfect sketch comedian, he does not feel like an obvious choice to become a movie star. In any sense, there isn't like a clear
Sure.
pathway in ahead to
But neither
how does this
did
guy
Mike
become a leading man.
Myers, you know, or whatever, right?
I feel like the other important through line in the characters he plays is there is that like childishness, like he's a man child, he's an overgrown boy,
Right.
which also then is like, well, you can't really be romantic interest because
No.
adult women aren't sexually attracted to man childs. I don't know what the plural of that is.
Man children.
children.
No, that's why it's especially weird when Zoe Deschanel and him go on a date in Elf. Because he's literally has the mind of a child.
Yeah, okay, if you're gonna throw a romance into a Will Ferrell movie, okay, but that can't be the point. That's just a gross thing that I guess you
it can't be the point.
The best ones are the ones where the romantic subplot feels like a parody of romantic subplots. Like Amy Adams and Talladega Nights, Christina
100%.
Applegate.
Anchorman.
Right.
I mean, the fact that the other guys, the joke is that he's married to Eva Mendes, and the whole time Mark Wahlberg is like, I don't understand. We have to begin with, how did you marry this woman? Anytime they're talking, and he's that's a good joke.
I just think about there's a quote. I remember Fincher doing some interview after the whole extended casting process of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Remember that when there was a year of people breathlessly
who will
speculating.
play Lisbeth? Yes.
Right. And it had apparently come down to Scarlett Johansson and Rooney Mara.
Yeah, I pierced my nipple for that role. Didn't even get a call back.
I did too, and I didn't even get a first read.
I did too, and I wasn't even auditioning.
No.
I don't know.
We just all had the fever. We'd gotten the Lisbeth bug. But he said this thing that I think about all the time, where he was like, look, Scarlett Johansson gave a really great audition. I was very impressed. I didn't think she had it in her. But what it boiled down to for me was Scarlett Johansson was acting. Scarlett Johansson was doing a really good job acting in a way I had not seen her do before. But Rooney Mara is inherently weird. There's something just inherently weird about her.
Her
She's
energy.
so good in that movie.
He looked at her and he's like, this woman has never eaten a pie before.
Right. He's just everything about you is fucking strange. And with a movie like this and the way I work, what's important is, what is the inherent movie star quality that you have, which is, what is the thing that at 4:00 in the morning when we've been filming for 16 hours and we're on the 100th take cannot be beaten out of you? It's just what is the thing that is just innately in you that I will get on screen every single second I shoot of you? And I feel like with Will Ferrell, it's a similar thing that Hollywood has constantly struggled with outside of McKay, which is how do you use what he's good at and how do you not apply him to things that he fundamentally doesn't click doing? Because there are just these things about him that are so inherently there, even when he tries to play serious. Even when he's playing more of a character, even when he's playing more of an everyman. It's just there's shit that you just cannot control with him. But
so Will Ferrell.
Yes.
Go ahead.
SNL, then it's sort of building
SNL.
This career of
He does small parts.
The first two Austin
Powers. Dick. He does, a couple of movies that are based on sketches. Night at the Roxbury.
He's very funny in Dick in a very small
He's very
role.
funny in
Right.
Dick.
He
Great
does
movie.
all three. That's those three Paramount SNL movies that come out one year after another when Lorne Michaels is like, I'm going to make an SNL movie every year. Every fall there'll be a new SNL movie.
Right.
And
Night at the Roxbury, then Superstar, then The Ladies' Man.
He is co-lead in all of them. I believe he's second billed in all three of those movies.
That sounds plausible. I'm looking up The Ladies' Man is the one I remember the least, even though it might be the funniest of those three movies.
I think so. He is fundamentally the second lead of that movie. He is the antagonist.
Sure. And then, and he'll pop, then, he's the villain in Zoolander.
Yeah.
Right? He's getting a little
And
bigger. And
people
then
love
old school.
him. Yeah.
Old school, he's just doing that thing where it's he's the wild card, right? He doesn't, he's a co-lead, but he doesn't need to be playing a realistic person.
But
it's silly.
He's in a perfect strike zone. It's a comedy, but he's playing it a little bit more like an actual human being than he maybe's been asked to do in the past. So it's showing maybe you can put him in a less heightened environment, even though that movie's obviously heightened. But I think the line at the time was, okay, but you can't make him a leading man. That movie works because he's the third guy. He gets his sections to run wild. But I will say, I do think, I know I like Old School a lot more than you do, and a lot of it does not hold up well. But I think
that movie has just never meant anything to me. I feel like a lot of people watch it all the time.
Yeah.
I've seen it twice.
It was a big one for me at the time. It was, I think, for me, what Wedding Crashers was for a lot of people, which was a movie that was never anything for me. But of that era, those Slack Pack movies, that was the one that clicked for me. I do think he plays the scenes with the dissolution of his marriage with actual pathos.
He's a good actor, or
right,
can
that's the
be.
thing. But that was a turning point of oh, this guy could maybe handle the emotional scenes if you push him up to a lead. But I feel like at the moment that Elf happens, people were like, this can't sustain an entire movie. Everything
Elf
about
is
that
10
movie,
months later.
Right. That seemed like you can't pin the whole movie on him, and this premise seems wafer thin. How is that going to last?
And the trailers are all, you feel like I've seen all the jokes. And Elf is a whole movie, and I remember feeling this when I watched it, where you're like, oh, they're pulling it off. Like the whole time is you being like, oh, they haven't fucked up. Yep. Yeah. Elf's great.
And I mean, like the only, like, I know how David, you and I feel about one of these movies. I'm curious to hear Dana's opinion. But I feel like there are only 2 movies that have like entered the Christmas canon in the last 20 years successfully. And they're Elf and Love Actually.
Yeah.
And I think Love Actually is pretty much a war crime.
Terrible movie.
Yeah, I think as a film, it does not work. I think there's
sections
chapters. There's sections of it that I enjoy, and I think I have like a nostalgic attachment to it. But like if I'm looking at it through like the cold lens of like, is this a movie? Like, no, it's not a movie. It opens with that monologue about 9/11 that everyone forgets.
Yes, it does.
One day I'll do a commentary for that movie for the Patreon. That's just me screaming. Yeah, the entire time.
I do like Elf. I haven't seen it for a long time, but I would hope it holds up. I feel like I've watched it like on TBS 1,000 times.
I love it. I think it's a masterpiece. I watch it with my family once a year. We almost always watch it on Christmas, or at least my sister and I. I think it just really fucking works. But that's the moment. Anchorman's in production. That's already gonna happen. But now that movie made $175 million domestically.
It was a huge hit.
It was
huge
humongous.
Domestic hit. It was not a big international hit.
The important thing that we do need to flag about Elf, though, is I think the only part that doesn't work, as we were talking about earlier, is the subplot with Zooey Deschanel, the love interest.
And for the exact reason you said, it's just he's a child. He's a child. And she's playing to the top of her intelligence in that movie. I think she's very good in that movie. But you just never at any point believe that she would view him as a sexual entity.
It's not her fault, but just make them friends. That's fine.
Right.
Yeah. Totally fine.
He can teach her the magic of Christmas, and they can be friends.
No, I don't think anyone sees the baby at the end and is like, I'm okay with this.
Right.
I don't want to imagine him having sex. I don't want to imagine Buddy the elf like being like, oh.
It feels perfunctory, and then when Anchorman comes out like 6 or 7 months later, and all of the sexual stuff in Anchorman is treated like a joke, you're like, this feels more comfortable. This is how this should work. He can play as ridiculous as he wants to, and it's all, and nothing has any real stakes here. That movie does well. It obviously grows a lot more past its initial release, but it's not as big of a hit as Anchorman. But this 2005 is the year where it's like, okay,
he's everywhere.
Now we're going to start giving him $15 to $20 million paychecks.
He's in 5 movies. He's in Woody Allen's Melinda and Melinda, which is a movie I've seen. I don't really remember that well, but I remember it being fairly bad.
I think he's all right now.
He's fine in it. He's playing the Woody Allen, right?
Which is weird. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's just the whole, right? It's like Rhoda Mitchell has 2 versions of the same story. One is comic.
This has the makings of a great comedy or a delicious tragedy. That's my Wallace Shawn. I'm sorry, it's not better. Come in.
That movie goes nowhere.
Yeah, correct.
Kicking and Screaming, which is the kids soccer comedy
with Josh
directed
Hutcherson,
by Bob Dylan's son.
Yes,
with Josh Hutcherson. That is sort of like the perfect example of Hollywood looking at his output till now and just being like, should you just yell all the time? Like, let's just construct a project around you screaming your head off.
That's also a movie where the director got fired like a week into production. Bob Dylan's son was like a pinch hitter on that movie because it was going so catastrophically wrong like 5 days in. But that's also this thing that I feel like is very often the downfall of most comedy leading men, which is you become so valuable, your quote becomes so high that if a script is actually good, they don't want to give it to you because if a script is funny, you can hire someone who isn't expensive yet and they'll make it funny. What you want to pay someone $20 million to do is a high concept comedy where they're like, on paper, this seems to us like it should be funny, but no one has successfully written any jokes for it. If we hire you, you will, through sheer force of will, make it funny, right?
He'll just scream the lines and the audience will laugh out of habit.
Right. Oh, you'll do your improvs or whatever and you'll make it funny. Like, that's how Eddie Murphy ends up doing Meet Dave, is just like, he costs too much money where the only scripts that are going to get offered to him are It's blank does a blank. It's blank inside of a blank. Blank works as a blank. And they're just like, you take care of making jokes.
Mike Ditka is third build in that movie.
That movie's insane.
As himself.
And who's second build in that movie?
Robert Duvall, right?
Yes, Academy Award winner Robert Duvall.
I saw it on a plane. He's like, his dad is the rival, right? The rival coach.
It's a comedy version of Great Santini centered around
children's
suburban soccer league. Yes,
right.
Yes. Right. Where Mike Ditka has a large role.
Yeah, Mike Ditka is like his neighbor or something.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff with Mike Ditka.
His assistant coach. Yes, it's a terrible movie.
Okay. Fourth is his small appearance in Wedding Crashers, obviously the biggest hit of the bunch.
Right.
And then fifth is the producers. The third is Bewitched. We'll talk about Bewitched.
And
the other thing is producers.
He just plays the Nazi in Producers, right?
He does.
Yeah, he's the crazy guy with the pigeons.
But we all remember his very deserved Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actor for that movie.
What?
No, Dana, of course you remember that because we were all talking about that performance in 2005.
I mean, the producers, which was all, Nicole Kidman was supposed to be in, correct? And was recast with Uma Thurman.
They almost did 2 movies together. They were almost our new Hepburn and Tracy.
Four Golden Globe nominations.
Yeah.
Picture, actor, supporting actor, original song.
But this is a perfect example of this comedy A-lister thing where they're like, okay, let's test you out. What can we slot you into? Like, what works?
Does he do Stranger Than Fiction somewhere in this time?
That
following
is the next year. The next year is a goddamn glut as well, because you got Talladega Nights, which is obviously a genuine hit.
Huge.
You have that indie movie Winter Passing that doesn't exist. And,
doesn't exist.
Isn't he voice in Curious George?
He's the man with the yellow hat. And we all remember that, of course, for Stranger Than Fiction, he got his second Golden Globe nomination for Best Lead Actor in a Comedy.
He has 2? Does he have more than that?
2 in 2 back-to-back years.
The weird thing about Stranger Than Fiction is I feel like I almost like that movie, and he's so miscast to me that it upsets the whole balance of the film.
That movie is just not as good as it should be.
No.
Well, that's it. That's what's so frustrating about it is I like Maggie Gyllenhaal, and I'm like, I think
Maggie Gyllenhaal's really good in that movie.
Yeah, and he's so off. His tone is so different than the tone of the rest of the movie.
But I think it's that same thing, too, of just, like, you watch... I remember my dad seeing About Schmidt, a movie I'm curious to rewatch, but I asked him how it was, and he said, it's just weird. You spend the whole movie waiting for the scene where Jack Nicholson pops, and it never happens.
That's crazy. That movie rules.
I agree with you. And I think that was my dad's preconceived notions. But his take on it was, Jack Nicholson is capable of being Jack Nicholson. I assume if you cast him, it's because there's going to be some scene where he finally loses it, And I think in that example, that is an incorrect expectation. But I think with Will Ferrell, you put him in a movie in something like Stranger Than Fiction, you're like, okay, Will Ferrell is mild-mannered in Act 1. Act 3, he's going to lose his shit, right? Something's got to happen. Otherwise, you don't cast him. Right, he's got to blow his top.
They gave us him blowing his top in the trailer. I remember that very distinctly.
Right.
So much screaming.
Yes.
He didn't need to scream.
This era was just, 5 times a year you see a trailer in which Will Ferrell screams.
Anyway, so this is but I think this movie is the perfect example of Hollywood not knowing what to do with him, trying to slot him into the more traditional rom-com-y, like, you'll be funny, sure, but you can also be a leading man, right? Like, you can do it all. I don't know if there's a version of this movie where Will Ferrell is playing a more conventionally appealing person. Obviously, this movie is completely hamstrung by the, insane concept. Like,
yes,
it's hard for anyone to be real. The most fucking grounded character is like Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
Who just looks concerned.
And wears nice sweaters.
But
where's a nice sweater?
To wrap up this Ferrell loop, I feel like after that 2-year run you're talking about, and Talladega Nights being far and away the biggest hit of that 2-year run, he's sort of like, okay, I gotta stay in my like Gary Sanchez, Adam McKay lane. They have their production company. If a movie isn't directed by McKay, it's very often produced by McKay. It was very often developed by McKay. The ones that are less good are very often things that McKay helped incubate and then said, I'll let other people make them. Like things
Blades
like
of Glory.
Yeah, and Land of the Lost, which is really, really fucking strange, but started out as a McKay movie and then became like a very overblown, over budget thing. But it's stuck between those two zones rather than just being let's slot Will Ferrell into some old TV show. But then it is like, I remember people constantly being like, oh, Will Ferrell's star is done. He just had 2 big flops. And then another McKay movie would come out and it was like, oh, he's rebounded. It's the other guys. People like him again. It's a hit.
And Bewitched is predicated on the idea that if a movie star has a big flop, his career is over and everyone hates him. Women in coffee shops, waitresses.
Yes.
He is universally derided because he had a big flop.
They hold it against white men so hard if they have one flop. They never get to work again. Do, do, do. Do, do, do.
Okay. Yes, I'm accepting the call.
God, what kind of wild character is this going to be? I just can't even... No, because I feel like every time we get Zoom bombed, it's someone really wild and high energy, gives our show a little jolt, maybe overstays their welcome. I just can't even imagine this is going to be. Let them in, David.
I let them in.
Hello?
Hello. Who's this?
Hi, it's 80s movie star C. Thomas Howell.
Hello. A movie star. This is great. C. Thomas Howell.
I mean,
from
I still
such
act,
films
but
as
I'm self-aware. I think the 80s were probably my peak, right? We'd agree on
The
that.
Hitcher.
Yeah.
Red Dawn. C. Thomas
Sure.
Howell. Anyway, what's up, bud?
Hey, well, I just want to give you guys a exclusive. Obviously the entertainment industry's shut down right now. You can't really film, so we're all having to look for alternative revenue streams. So I've taken a job as a spokesperson, and I have changed my name in the process.
What's your new name?
My name is no longer C. Thomas Howell.
Mm-hmm.
It's C. Thomas Towel, because I am so excited about Brooklynin's new line of towels.
Well, look, I don't want to criticize your personal choices, and I'm glad you're finding work. And I mean, I might not personally change my name to advertise these towels, but I will say, I've got these towels.
Yeah.
Recently got a pair of Brooklinen towels in my house. Yeah. They are pretty good. They are kind of name-changingly good.
Yeah, they're pretty great. And I want to make it clear, I actively sought out this job. Because I'm such a big fan of the towels. I mean, look, you guys are sitting there. Yeah, you're kicking back. You got this cushy podcast. I've seen your Patreon. And here you are getting Brooklinen sponsorships thrown at you because people like your content. Meanwhile, I had to prove to Brooklinen that I was of value to them as a spokesperson. So yes, maybe I changed my name permanently.
To C. Hummus Towel.
Correct, because these towels are great. I'm very passionate about them. This is a passion project for me. I mean,
you could also, if you wanted to advertise some hummus, you could be C. Hummus Towel.
Well, that's ridiculous. Why would I do that?
Okay, I'm so sorry for saying that.
I mean, that sounds like a sweaty bit. Okay, these towels, they mean a lot to me because, especially now, we're all in lockdown, right? I find that the shower can be the most important part of the day, if not...
It's a good time.
The 3 or 4 most important parts of the day. We're all feeling very germ conscious right now. We're all spending a lot of time indoors. We're starting to hit that summer heat. There's nothing quite like getting a brief or maybe even lengthy shower to relax. And we all hate getting out of the shower, right? It's often a rude awakening to step out of the warm embrace of a shower. But there's nothing to ease that transition like a warm, soft, comfy C. Hummus towel. They're not calling them that. I'm calling them that. I'm trying to create the brand and connection.
Look, they're really nice, ultra soft, super absorbent towels. I'm not sure I would change my name for them, but I'd think about it.
That's you.
They're pretty good.
You have a podcast. You don't need to.
I know. Well, listen, I just want to point out a couple things.
Yeah.
Brooklinen, it's the perfect place to find all the comforts for home, including ultra soft towels. So, they got their sheets, they have their loungewear, they have all kinds of fun stuff. And they're so confident in their product that everything comes with a lifetime warranty. So if you use promo code CHECK for 10% off your first order at brooklinen.com, that's BROOKLINEN.com, promo code CHECK. You're going to have a great time. You're going to get some nice towels. It's everything you need to live your most comfortable life.
Hey, David, you made a great point. Obviously, I got very excited about the towels because they're a new product for Brooklyn. And in that excitement, I changed my name to C. Hummus Towel. But as you point out, Brooklinen is not just a towel company, and I feel like my name is not paying fair credit to the rest of their products. So I want to announce here formally that I'm changing my name once again.
Okay.
To Sheet Hummus Towel.
I wish you luck in all future endeavors.
Once again, my name is Sheet Hummus Towel, and I love Brooklinen.
A couple things I want to say. One, I guess I'm trying to think. Will it have come out by the time? I think it'll have come out. But Netflix has a Eurovision movie.
Yes, directed by David Dobkin, director of The Judge.
I believe coming out the day this releases or somewhere around there.
With Rachel McAdams.
Yes.
And Pierce Brosnan. And I hear that movie completely rules. Like, everyone is telling me how good it is. Yes.
I'm so excited. I love Eurovision.
Like, serious film critics that I know have watched their screener multiple times.
Wow.
Someone told me it made them cry. Like,
oh my
while
God.
mostly being like, it's funny.
I was ready for that to be a calamity.
Maybe it's also everyone being stir crazy, but the hype on that one is good. But it does that one looks more like a Holmes and Watson, where you're like, well, this is probably going to be something we just ignore. Right?
When Holmes and Watson came out, I was a writing for Entertainment Weekly. They did not have any press screenings.
I'm sorry, Dana, we're just going to have to take another take of that. Can you say that again very quickly?
Sure. When Holmes and Watson came out, I was.
Ew. No, I'm sorry. I was overeager. Let's take 3. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. When Holmes and Watson came out, I was writing at Entertainment Weekly.
Ew. Okay. And keeping all.
There we go.
Takes.
Great.
And there were no press screenings for that film, which I had to write.
They did not hold press screenings for that.
I had to write a review for. And I believe I was assigned that movie because it came out on Christmas Day, and they knew that as a Jewish person with no family in Los Angeles, they were like, well, Dana has nothing else to do. So at 10 in the morning, I went alone to the Grove to see Holmes and Watson alone on Christmas Day. And it was, I think, probably the worst Christmas I've ever had.
Holmes and Watson. They don't have a clue.
As I was leaving the theater, I overheard 2 strangers say, that movie was fucking awful. 2 people who voluntarily saw that movie at 10 a.m. on Christmas Day, presumably because they didn't have to review it somewhere else.
People were vicious about that movie. I mean, it was the worst reviewed movie of that year. It won the Razzie for Best Picture and Best Director. Like, it was... Right. Yes, I'm sorry. But that's another thing is like, okay, so he has this period where it's like, the McKay-directed movies are the highs, but then you have, like, Blades of Glory will do well in this and that. And then it's the point where McKay is like, wait a second, I want to be very serious. And not only does he stop directing comedies, but he also stops developing them and producing them with Farrell. He's so much more in, like, the Succession lane, and they've now dissolved Gary Sanchez. That's when Farrell is really like, now we're into Get Hard territory, 2 Daddy's Homes, Holmes and Watson.
How much do you think it broke Will Ferrell's heart that he wasn't W in Vice?
Oh, man.
I wonder if that was a conversation where they were like, we can't do that.
Yeah.
I wonder.
It would break, it would break the movie.
It would break the movie, but fucking break that movie. What do I care?
Absolutely. And I would kind of like to see McKay figure out how to use him in a McKay movie.
Well, I look, Anchorman 2 is what I saw it once and I have not revisited, and a couple people have been like, check it out again. There's something there. And I've been like, we'll see. I haven't really gone back to that.
My take on that movie is that's a movie made by someone who doesn't want to be making comedies anymore.
Yeah, that I sort of agree. That right. And what funny stuff there is because you have these funny actors and they're doing things.
There are individual bits in it. The best performance in that movie, comedically, Greg Kinnear kills it.
Kinnear's funny.
I love Kinnear. I'm a big Kinnear head.
Oh, yeah. This is a very pro-Kinnear podcast.
But like post Anchorman 2, his hits are the Lego Movie and the Daddy's Homes.
Yeah.
Like the Lego Movie, I think he's really wonderful in that, but like obviously that's...
But both the live action and the voiceover, I think he is incredibly good in that. In the second one, he's a cameo.
second one is barely in it. But and the daddy's homes are. I mean, there's even people have tried to talk me into those, and
I've tried to
find them.
I have not been able. I can't watch the second one. I'm not fully defending them. I think there's stuff in the first one that is incredibly strange and interesting.
Him and Wahlberg are very funny in the other guys.
Agree.
Like it's not like they are not a good team.
I'm not arguing.
The first one, fine. The second one, I can't.
Hey, look. I have not watched the second one. I can't deal with the second one. I refuse to deal with the second one. John Lithgow's reveal in the trailer, one of the great moments of comedy, but I'm not watching that fucking movie. The first one has some good bits in it. It's not a particularly good movie. It has some good bits.
And let's just pull back though, because I think Farrell will figure it out. He'll do something else. Like I don't know. Maybe he'll make a movie with McKay again. Maybe Eurovision wins Best Picture. He's supposed to do some Maybe it
series with Paul Rudd. I don't know. I don't know.
Eurovision is perfect. He'll probably do a funny voice and be like a big character, and everyone will like it. He's wearing a wig.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
I think it's what people want out of him.
Yeah. 100. That's what I want out of him. I
Yes.
want him to do a silly voice and make me laugh and sing a song, and be in a comedy.
Yes.
Bewitched.
Yeah. Okay. Can I
Nora
read through
Ephron's
this?
Bewitched. Yes.
Speed round through this. Okay. So the movie is set up in the 90s. Okay. This is when there's sort of this like feeding frenzy for like 15 years on. The shows that are in syndication need to be made into movies. Be they animated, be they live action, sitcom, dramatic. Like everything's getting fucking turned into a movie. Like Addams Family, Fugitive, Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
You know, the Jetsons movie. Like all these 60s, 70s, 50s TV shows are getting regurgitated. And it's just like peak syndication, reruns, cable. You have these shows that now like 3 generations have lived with. And for Hollywood, that's like dollar signs in the eyes.
Right, exactly.
I think that's the calculation.
Brand recognition, 100%.
Right.
And just the existence of cable TV and, like you say, reruns has just burned these things into the collective consciousness, whether or not you've even seen them. Like, so there's the Scooby-Doo movie, right? Like, yeah.
Like, you know what's a crazy one that I think about? The George of the Jungle movie coming out in the 90s and us being like, oh, yeah, George of the Jungle movie. I know George of the Jungle. I know the song. That show
you know the song.
Had less than 15 episodes in total. It had one season that ran in the 70s, and 20 years later, we still knew it deeply because there was not enough original programming for children that those 12 episodes were still being replayed ad infinitum.
And then, following the Brendan Fraser thing, he was in a Dudley Do-Right movie.
He was.
Right.
Like,
that was them. Shit. That was them going too far, though. That was them being like, "Can we do anything?" No,
but like
not
for
a segment from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah.
But think about it this way, as like an equivalent. If you were to tomorrow announce a live-action Ah Reel's Monsters movie, that would be pitched at 90s kid nostalgia.
I'm in.
Mean nothing.
I would watch that movie.
But that's my point. We would be into it, right? I don't think that would mean anything inherently to a 6-year-old.
No, you're right, because things have grown more diffuse and there's not like
a monoculture.
Yeah. Right.
But hey, give me that Ah Reel Monsters. Come on.
So
come on.
Give me a live action rocket power. I want to see people surf on waves that are the size of a city skyscraper.
I am here for all of these. But it's very much the point that the things don't have the same sort of meaning. I do think now we're seeing Friends and The Office hit a level that we viewed Happy Days at when we were young and watching like Nick at Night, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the success of those shows on streaming services shows that same kind of thing of like, I want to watch the past generation's comfort food. But in the 90s, the film is set up. It's bought by Paramount for a large amount of money. The rights, because it's so high concept, it's one of those shows that replays. Everyone knows the theme song. Everyone knows the nose wiggle. The advertising campaign sets itself up. It's originally supposed to be a Ted Bessel. It's supposed to direct it, an actor.
Who? Okay.
Ted Bessel, who I think had mostly done sitcoms.
Okay.
But it's set up by Penny Marshall's first look deal at Paramount with Bessel supposed to do it. And she hires a former staff writer named Monica Johnson from Laverne and Shirley to do it. Then Richard Curtis takes a crack at the script. Then Douglas Carter Bean takes a crack at the script. So already, first strike at making a Bewitched movie in the early 90s. they're like, this is weirdly difficult. No one can crack this. We're getting increasingly overqualified writers to try to tackle what seems like it should be a gimme, and no one can find any way to make a fucking movie out of this.
And I imagine at this point, it's not the idea where they're making a Bewitched
absolutely not.
TV show.
At this point, it is a completely conventional Bewitched movie. It is normal guy marries a woman, finds out after wedding that she's a witch. That's all they're trying to do. They're trying to take the shortest walk to a Bewitched movie.
Yes.
Then Ted Bessel dies, suddenly of an neurotic aneurysm, okay? So the whole thing is halted. It's done. The thing's shut down. Then Penny Marshall goes, fuck it. I'm not giving up on that Bewitched movie premise. It seems like at no point does she want to direct this herself. But she
did
gets...
produce it.
Yes. This movie is 2 main producer credits, Penny Marshall and Nora Ephron.
Yep.
So she carries the movie over to Sony, where I think she's set up at the time. They go through whoever is hot at that moment. Cameron Diaz, Kristen Davis, Lisa Kudrow, Gwyneth Paltrow, Alyssa Silverstone, Reese Witherspoon. Everyone has sort of talked about it. And Ellen Simon, who wrote One Fine Day, Larice Alshanani, who wrote My Girl, the Brady Bunch movie. Everyone's taking a crack at it, and no one's getting anywhere. There's a certain point where it morphs into Jim Carrey is loosely attached to the movie, but the movie, without being about the making of a witch TV show, is maybe taking more of a self-knowing Brady Bunch tone. And one of the big conceits of the movie is that halfway through, the actor playing Darren is going to change.
That's funny.
Sure. One of the things the sitcom is famous for is replacing the actor, Dick York.
Right.
Literally he just quit because he was fucking tired, right? Like he was like ill and he was like, I can't do this anymore. What came out at the end of his life
was he had a really bad injury, I think, in the war, and then had a bad surgery and became addicted to painkillers after it.
Oh, that's sad.
And he was struggling with both his pain and his drug addiction. And there was like a day where everything came to a head on set, and he said, like, I need to step away from this.
I think he collapsed on set or something
Yeah.
like that. And there's just like it's like the director was just like, "Do you want to quit?" And he was like, "If that's all right with you."
Yeah.
And they, instead of just being like, "You know what? We did 5 seasons. Let's wrap it up." They're like, "Fucking all right, get someone else. Like
Right.
we're gonna get a new Darren right
Another
now."
strong-jawed white guy.
Right, and
Yep.
it went from Dick York to Dick Sargent. It was like the joke was like they both have the same first name. They look kind of similar. When you're watching in syndication and they're in out of order, you're always trying to remember which one it is you're watching. So they were like, oh, maybe that's a hook of the movie, is like you do the Brady Bunch movie style thing where you're sort of playing off the tropes of the sitcom while existing in the world of the sitcom, but you have one actress playing Samantha, 2 big comedy stars playing Darren, and you switch them halfway through. And for a long time, it was like, Jim Carrey's on board. They're having a hard time finding another equally famous actor who's willing to only be in half the movie. And Jim Carrey was bandied about because apparently Dick York was one of his big inspirations, and they look really similar. So he wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But then in the mid-2000s, early 2000s, this is like the same position that Green Hornet was in, where someone's just going like, we've been sitting on this property for fucking 20 years. We have to make something.
That's what happens. It becomes a thing where they're just like, if we don't make a Bewitched movie, I'm going to blow up this studio. I swear. I've been in too many meetings about Bewitched for us to not make it now.
Things have gone too far. The next Bewitched pitch in the door gets an automatic.
Right, exactly.
That's really what it was. So Amy Pascal calls up Nora Ephron, who she's close with, has worked with before, and says, like, Nora, I need someone to rescue Bewitched. Anything. And
First
Nora's
thought, best thought.
Right. And truly, I think she just says, look, I wouldn't be interested in making a movie about that TV show. Is there anything to making a movie about someone trying to make the TV show? And she goes, yes, absolutely. Here you go, green light. Like, it was just sort of like full speed ahead.
What if a novelist or TV writer wrote about how hard it is to write a novel or a film?
Well,
has anyone ever thought of that?
Well,
I get it, because I get how that pitch can seem appealing, because like you say, Bewitched is famous for switching actors anyway, right?
Uh-huh.
So you can sort of do a jokey, and like, what, things are getting rebooted. We got Scooby-Doo movies, right? I can see why they're like, yeah, perfect. That's a funny angle on an old-fashioned thing.
There's one more wrinkle here in the development process, which ties the whole room together. it's that Nicole Kidman had already loosely been in talks for the nebulous "we don't have a script, she would be a good star for Bewitched." Then she wins the Oscar, and everyone's like, fuck, she looks a lot like Elizabeth Montgomery. Now she's a big movie star. We assume she's going to become a big mainstream comedy star.
So we have to lock this shit down.
Right.
From The Hours. Her performance in The Hours was so side-splittingly funny.
Right. We need to lock this shit down, though, because, yes, obviously, she made us yuck with The Hours, and people are going to want to keep that train rolling. So they signed Nicole Kidman to a $17.5 million pay-or-play contract. Nicole Kidman will get $17.5 million even if the movie doesn't get made. That's what that means.
Hey. Yeah.
Get it, Nicole. But so that's when Amy Pascal reaches out to Nora Ephron and is like, anything. We have Nicole Kidman. There's a ticking clock. I've seen too many versions of this movie. It has to be this. So then they go back to Jim Carrey and they go, Jim, we got Nora Ephron on board. We got a real filmmaker on board, and Nicole's on board. Are you down to do it? He's less into doing the one that isn't meta in the way that he thought he was going to do. Right. And so he leaves it for fun with Dick and Jane. And that's when they're like, we need to slot in who is like the new Jim Carrey. Like, who else is just in that zone of like, funny man? Let's not even think of what their persona is. Who is just an A-list comedy star? Because this role kind of makes more sense with Jim Carrey.
Well, Jim Carrey, as you said, looks a lot like Dick York, but because he has that sort of old, sorry, I knocked my mic. He sort of has that old school Hollywood face, like that jaw and that chin. And the hair, like he looks like a 1950s movie star when he's not being silly.
Yeah, I think Will Ferrell is handsome, but he is more like sort of adorable, I would guess, or lovable or something.
He's cuddly.
Jim Carrey,
he's cuddly.
Jim Carrey's hot.
Jim Carrey's hot.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey can be a very beautiful man. Yes.
Jim Carrey in Liar Liar is like a great, like, kind of hot dirtbag white guy.
So in
now suit. I like. Am I too horny on Maine? Like he's hot.
No, he is. And even just when like he's like in his sort of like off the farm, like bearded, like dirty white t-shirt zone, I'm like, but he's the hottest version of that. Like he's just got that energy. And this is a thing, Dana, I feel like you asked at the beginning of the episode, and now that we've done all the table setting, we can get into the many questions about the internal logic of this movie. What kind of star is Will Ferrell supposed to be in this movie? It is a thing that drives me crazy in movies about fictional movie stars where you cannot even identify an analog for what he's supposed to be. Because it's like, it seems like, are we supposed to accept that Will Ferrell is a very self-serious, conventional A-list drama star? Because that seems to be the types of projects they talk about. Then the midsection where he gives her like the comedy lessons, it seems like this is a guy who came out of sketch comedy and learned like funny faces and funny walks and is teaching her pratfalls. And then you see all the clips of the movies he's been in, and all of them are like bad prestige movies.
Yeah, like serious. They're parodies of incredibly serious movies, but and I'm putting joke in quotes. Like the joke is that in these prestige serious movies, he's like doing bad mugging.
Right, because Will Ferrell does not look like he is a guy who was in Mel Gibson movies. If that's what we're supposed to believe he was.
There's the Sherpa one.
Yes.
What are the other parodies?
There's a boxing one.
Right.
And then there's a Vietnam one.
The Vietnam one. Right. Those are the three you see.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's the thing that's most infuriating to me that I could not wrap my head around was also that he is a hated movie star. That like women are like, oh, Jack, what's his last name?
I dare you to tell me his last name. His last name is Wyatt.
Yeah, Jack Wyatt. But when they find out that he's in this Jack Wyatt movie, everyone's like, ugh, Jack Wyatt? Like, he's this A-list movie star who was in a flop, but like women hate him, sort of? Like, was he Me Too? Did he have like a Mel Gibson scandal?
His wife left him.
His wife left him for a male model. Would you think people would have sympathy for him?
Yes, he would totally get sympathy for that.
And
that would
she
not
would
be
dragged extensively. Like
this
in
is
our
2005.
horrible society. Yes. There is no way that he ends up hated in that scenario, especially when his big vanity project is that artsy. Like, people just wouldn't care. They keep on talking about how the movie, like, maybe we shouldn't have shot it in black and white. You know?
They say no one saw it, which is fine. Right. Yeah, then he makes another movie. No one saw it. It wasn't offensive. It wasn't like he did blackface. You know what I mean? Like, he's not coming back from a scandal.
But something like Tropic Thunder, where you're like, okay, this movie is trying to pretend that like Ben Stiller is like a Stallone type character who's had too many flops in a row. Obviously, Ben Stiller does not realistically play like someone who could be that sort of serious, straightforward action star. But I understand this movie takes place on Wackadoo Planet, and at least they've told me what kind of star he is.
Yeah, they give us the fake trailer, so we know exactly what type of star he is.
He's supposed to be Schwarzenegger somehow, or whatever. Yes.
But,
or so Tom Cruise, I thought.
Any one of them, any combination of them.
In it.
But the point is, we get the analogs of what he's supposed to be. In this, I'm like, are we supposed to accept that when he walks down the street, people view him as a conventionally sexy leading man, or not? This is a problem I also have with Birdman, where Birdman, they act like Michael Keaton's character is this like dumb lunkhead jock who's straining for serious credibility. And I'm like, Michael Keaton is fucking weird. Everything about him is weird.
Yes, has always been unconventional.
Right. That was the whole... People rioted when he was Batman. Like, you're never going to convince me that he was like some empty, like muscle-bound star.
Yeah, that he needs to try to be taken seriously as an actor.
Right, and then the Will Ferrell thing here is the opposite, which is just like the movie is like, are people going to buy him in a sitcom?
Yeah, are they going to buy this like hated sort of hacky hack in a cash grab sitcom, which is like, yeah, of course, that's what this character was built for.
Will Ferrell, of course, would be, yes. Well, who could he be? This is now I'm wrecking.
I was thinking 2018 Ben Affleck is who they're going for. They're preemptively.
Sure. I have one take.
He's just a douchebag, even though there's not like one thing. It's just that we all know he's a douchebag. Right.
Can I give you what my take is?
Yeah.
Knowing Nora Ephron, I kind of feel like this is who she was using as inspiration. Burt Reynolds.
Okay, because Burt Reynolds was on a sitcom.
That's why.
But no one hates Burt Reynolds. A waitress wouldn't like spit in his coffee.
There was
no woman in the regular world was mad at Burt Reynolds.
But there was that period in the 80s where it was
pain
like
in the ass.
He became too big, he became too arrogant, another messy divorce, and then it was viewed as like a real taking your lumps that he was suddenly on a CBS sitcom.
It is crazy that he did Evening Shade. Yes, that is crazy.
So, yes, it doesn't make sense. The public would not lash out at the guy. Burt Reynolds became a joke, and he was broke, and he didn't have a movie career anymore, and him being on a sitcom was weird, and he notoriously had a big ego, but the public didn't treat him this way. And that's the only sort of analog for this where you're like, okay, a guy who wasn't like super self-serious as a movie star, but was...
You know, it's a Matthew Perry. That's the thing. That's what I sort of get. And it's not that he's a big movie star.
Except that he was a TV star, right?
It's like he was a big TV star. I get the vibe that this is like Matthew Perry doing the Odd Couple reboot.
Sure.
That's my mental analog for this.
People are sick of him, I guess is probably what it's supposed to be, right? They're just sick of him. Like, maybe he didn't do anything specifically evil. They're just like, I've had enough of you. This is a terrible introduction to a romantic lead, though, as well.
Absolutely.
What's also very weird is that he is never once charming.
No.
Early on they tell us, they explicitly say she only took this role because she had a crush on him.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, even if this was the first man you've ever seen in the human realm, he's incredibly off-putting.
Well,
he's not charming and he's not flirtatious. They don't have a meet cute. They're like, for someone who's so good at romantic comedies, there is nothing in their interaction where she'd be like, I have a crush on you.
I have to say something because I need this out of my head before so the first scene of the movie that he's in, apart from that, like when he's at the pitch meeting and he's nice for 1 minute.
Cold open is, this feels like a Bewitched movie. Cold open is Nicole Kidman lands in some Californian suburb. She sees a nice house. And then, if I can just take 1 minute to dissect the logic already, tearing itself apart at the seams. She sees this house she likes. She wiggles her nose. She magically makes appear a realty sign saying that it's for sale, right?
Griffin, you're pointing out that she manipulates the laws of magic so that she can make a successful real estate transaction rather than just wiggling her nose and be like, I own this house.
Or I'll make a house. What she wants to do is go through, wiggle, here's the house, it's for sale. Oh no, additional wiggle, tours today. She seems to wiggle into existence a real estate agent who then tells her that she needs referrals. And then she wiggles, no referrals necessary, and closes the deal.
I wonder what happened to the family who lived in that home.
These are the many questions. It was a pre-existing house that wasn't for sale.
What if we just saw them all explode into goo? Like, that's the side effect.
This is the movie in a microcosm. Why is this movie making everything so much more complicated than it needs to be right away before a line of dialogue has been introduced?
Griffin,
what would be better is if she buys a shitty house that is already for sale and using magic makes it nice. We get it. Okay.
Uses it up.
Or she doesn't have the money and she uses magic to increase her bank account. Or she
the limits
uses
of her
magic to build a
power.
house.
She's omnipotent. She can do anything. She can control time
she can
and
make
reality.
time go backwards. She can
She's
rewind time.
Thanos.
So why is she going through myriad of steps of bureaucracy?
She has infinity gauntlet powers. She can control time, space, reality. She can do anything she wants.
But that is where this movie almost immediately tries to set up the one concept that is trying to do the heavy lifting of what you're saying, Dana, which is she is tired of being able to do anything. She wants her life to be boring and banal. She wants to deal with the daily inconveniences.
What is a compelling character if not someone who just wants her life to be boring?
I want to deal with
Love to see a woman with like infinite powers and be like, you know what I want to do? Nothing.
I wish I had less to do. And then she even says, I want to date a man who is like broken and imperfect. Like, it's like literally like, I need a fixer-upper. I want to date a man who sucks.
I'm gonna say, as a woman who has dated men who suck, it doesn't work.
It's not going to make you less existentially tormented.
And
Isabel.
I will say, as a man who has dated women who try to fix me, it doesn't work.
I'm also, the thing that it was interesting about the original Bewitched in a modern context, looking back on it, is she tells Darren, her husband, Samantha tells Darren that she's a witch, and he, in a 1950s, 60s housewife way, doesn't want her using magic in a sort of analog to like, I don't want my wife to work. That's sort of the joke and tension of the original sitcom. Is this idea that it's like, well, now you're married and you know what that means. You don't do your job. And she tries and there's some fun tension there. And that's the interesting tension that I would want to see confronted in a modern Bewitched. But instead, they're like, what if she just doesn't want to use magic? Because there are no consequences to her using magic. There's no reason or social tension. Just she doesn't want to, but then she will forever. Like she never stops using magic.
And it's almost like they're trying to set up an Elf premise where it's like, okay, it's a fish out of water comedy. It's someone who comes from such a different world where everything operates so differently that it's about them trying to understand how normal people live. But as you said, there's no tension inherent in her character because she keeps on breaking her own rules. It's just the idea that she's saying, I want to not use magic. But there's nothing at stake in either direction for her.
And David, just like how you were talking about that they don't establish like a witch realm, what works about Elf, first of all, is everyone knows the lore of the North Pole. That is a collective vocabulary we all have. And then the movie additionally establishes, we see a world of the North Pole as it exists. So then when he makes jokes about the North Pole, we all know, oh, haha, that's what it's like up there. This, we don't know what being a witch is like.
No, this movie, as I said, needs to open either with 5 to 10 minutes in like a bog, right? Like in like the moors. With her talking to like fucking Merlin.
No.
And just explain that she like grows up in like an alternate dimension in a cave before she comes to the world. And you go, it's not sitcom coding witch. It's not just she wiggles her nose. She actually comes out of like some different fantasy realm.
But a fantasy realm where you understand that sometimes apartments for rent have showings that day.
Right.
Here's what happens in the movie. She's revealed to be a witch, and her experience of being a witch is that she has unlimited powers. And then she also has a dad, played by Michael Caine, and he uses witch powers to get hella laid. Those are the two examples given to us in the first 10 minutes. Those are the only examples. There's no further rules defined.
And he's like, you gotta use your tricks. You gotta use them. They're the best thing in the world. Keep using them.
Only to get laid.
Only to get laid.
But like, also there's no consequences.
Thing is getting laid.
The weird thing about this movie is there are no consequences to messing with reality,
whatsoever.
people's free will.
No.
Like, he's like, use magic, it's the best. And she's like, no. And it's like, well, do it. You should. It's the best.
Right. No, Dana, it's a really good point you make that, like, I feel like, and the movie even calls it as a joke, but I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched were very much a pair at this point in time. But the difference is, I Dream of Jeannie is very much a male power fantasy. It's a kept woman. It's a woman in a bottle. I mean, it's similar to Bewitched in that she was capable of magic, but she does, right. She's got the physical gesture. But it was very much like an astronaut finds a woman in a bottle and she lives there and she does whatever she wants for him, whatever he wants, right? Like, it's that power fantasy. And Bewitched, as you said, is like being like, you can't run shit. Like, it's the tension of the guy always ends up pratfalling because his wife uses magic and he's trying to make her conform to, like, the nice kept woman, domestic wife standards of its day.
Yeah, it's like, isn't it funny of a male power, like the male power imbalance? It's like The Crown, where it's like, it's weird that we're in the 50s and I'm your husband and I should have the power here, but you literally have all the power here.
Now, I don't know what it is. The movie makes the joke about her being like, oh, let's do a rewrite and make her the CEO of a multi-conglomerate. Like, maybe that's the way you do a modern Bewitched movie. Maybe it has to be her existing in the world of business, you know? I don't fucking know. Or maybe you go, it's hard fantasy, it's elf. The premise is that she's coming out of a different movie. But to do the same sort of like wafer thin rules of magic that the TV series does, where the extent of magic is pretty much you can make your face appear on a label at a supermarket. Like, what the fuck are you doing here? But after that cold open, it almost immediately goes over to feral for 20 minutes.
Michael Caine as the Jolly Green Giant is kind of funny.
Kind of.
His little face on a really buff body, that is funny.
Yeah,
that's comedy.
Do, do, do. Yes, a standard noise that works
the
for
noise
any platform.
Of, incoming internet.
We're being Zoom bombed.
Call.
David, can you let this person into the call?
Well, hello.
Yes, come in.
Well, I need some help.
Can you just start by introducing yourself and letting me know what it is you need me to help you with?
Yes, my name is Butter B. Butterton. I'm a stick of butter.
Okay. I wasn't going to say anything, but that is obvious that you are a stick of butter.
And I need some butter help.
Okay. All right.
Why is there a sense of dread that just came over your face? Like you just did a calculation and you don't like how the numbers added up.
What do you mean by butter help? Like how would you describe butter help?
I feel like something's interfering with my happiness and preventing me from achieving my goals.
And your goal is to be just the best darn stick of butter that you can be?
Yeah, but I keep melting.
Well, if I'm just going to extrapolate what's going on here, I feel like by melting, you mean you're kind of like, melting down a little bit, right? You need someone to talk to, maybe help you through your most stressful times. Is that what's going on?
Yes, that applies, but also I think I'm physically melting a little bit. But go on, let's focus on the first.
Right, I mean, for you, you're made of butter, so butter. Right, like let's say if things are starting to, really get you down or prevent you from achieving your goals, like you said, you could get in touch with BetterHelp.
What?
Which is going to assess your needs and match you with a licensed professional therapist that you can communicate with in under 48 hours. Like, it's not a crisis line. This isn't like a self-help thing. This is a professional counseling service that's just done securely online.
I see what you're saying. So if I'm physically melting, maybe I need to find another outlet to solve that problem short term. But if we're talking long term, big picture, like my mental meltdowns, BetterHelp might be better than ButterHelp.
Yeah, exactly. And like the way it works is you can log into your account anytime. You can send a message to your counselor and get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room again. It's like traditional therapy, but it's more affordable and financial aid is available. And they've got all kinds of testimonials. If you look at betterhelp.com/reviews, you can see people shouting out particular doctors that they've enjoyed communicating with and counselors and things like that. It's pretty cool.
Oh, sounds great to me. I guess I should just turn off all these lights in my apartment, first things first, and then pull out my laptop and ring up old BetterHelp.
You can go to betterhelp.com/check. That's better, HELP, and join over the 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. So special offer, Blank Check listeners are going to get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/check.
Wow, I'll sign up for that right now.
We switched to Farrell. Farrell is washed up for whatever reason. His wife has left him for a male model or something. He's getting pitched on this sitcom. He's nice for 5 seconds.
That's the weird thing is he's a nice, reasonable guy, and we meet him and he seems fine. And then
it's a huge problem.
Jason Schwartzman says, like, you're being a pussy, and he says that 1,000 times.
Right.
And then
do you want to be the mayor of Pussytown? No, you want to be the mayor of Ballstown.
That should have been the quote you used.
I believe,
Griffin.
Is it Ballstown or Ballsville?
Really close. I came, Dana, really close to Pod Town and Castville or whatever.
No, yes, he's like the first meeting he has with Stephen Colbert and Jim Turner, right? Who are the showrunners or whatever. He's really nice.
Jim Turner, of course, from Arliss, someone I now have watched so many hours of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's nice. And then Schwartzman, his little pipsqueak
I love
agent.
Schwartzman. And also he is soft in temperament. The way that he works as an asshole is like the listen up Philip way, which is like, this is the guy who's just dismissive to everyone. He doesn't work as a guy where you imagine that he could dominate in a negotiation.
He's not the mayor of Ballville. He's never
not
been
the mayor
to Ballville.
He is, and that's a compliment to him.
Yeah.
He drags him away and he's like, what are you, a cuck? He gives him this whole speech.
Right.
He's like, you got to be an alpha. And then so Farrell makes a bunch of ridiculous demands, which I guess is funny. He wants a leopard. And that just feels like where they're like, we're going to roll camera, Will. Yes. Say some funny shit, right? Like that's what that
They brought on McKay to try to punch up his stuff. I think McKay was on set for a lot of this movie.
But that makes no sense.
Part of him getting the green light for
right, but he can't be Ron
Talladega.
Burgundy for half the movie and a Nora Ephron leading man for the other
No,
half.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. But that's like part of the Frankensteining of this movie is like we're gonna allocate certain scenes in which McKay takes the wheel and helps pitch Farrell a bunch of riffs.
But anyway, because of his demands, it's established that Samantha has to be played by an unknown. Then the movie kind of begins, and I could not say the rest of the plot and not go mad.
It changes every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Dana, what were you about to say?
I was going to, now that we go to the audition scene, I like that now the main conflict of the film is in Los Angeles, they cannot find a pretty 30-year-old actress who can deliver a line. You can't find an unknown actress who can say a line.
There's a montage. Everyone blows the line.
So here are a series of quick thoughts, okay? One, as both of you said, Will Ferrell introduced in this movie, very low status, vulnerable. He feels bad about his career. He's worried. He's a little bit sympathetic, right? He goes to the meeting with the negotiations. He's like, this thing has to be a two-hander. I love the original Bewitched. I want to find someone to play Samantha and kill it. Schwartzman pulls him aside, is like, you have to be an asshole. And then he's an asshole for the next hour, right? Then everything he's doing is just a status play. It is just trying to throw his weight around and make everyone value him more. There's something there. Jackie Earle Haley, a great man, once said to me, the thing you realize that's terrifying when you get a little bit of success in this industry is everyone starts daring you to become an asshole. There is a system that falls into place where it's almost like if you don't act like an asshole, everyone will take advantage of you. And so it's
the thing we talked about with George Miller rejecting his trailer on Eastwick, and so they're like, "Oh, you must be a total wuss! Like we're gonna like push you around."
I don't know if that belongs in a Bewitched movie, but there's a thing there. There is something to work with in a more realistic way of someone feeling the need to still exert power in order to sell the idea that they're not washed up and tanking a project in the process. But here's where you get to like this movie making everything a longer walk than it needs to be. This movie refusing to follow like Occam's razor. With the way this character is set up at this moment, it would make so much more sense. It would be so much more believable if they keep on reading big actors for the role and he feels threatened by the idea of having someone who's at the same level of him as him.
Yeah.
Then he sees this woman in a bookshop who he wants to fuck, and he goes to the studio and he's like, you have to hire her. You know, like you would buy this character being the kind of guy who is like, I'm telling you, this unknown actress has it because he is sexually attracted to her, and kind of like collapses the entire project, rather than this weird immediate miscalculation of, oh, we need to hire an unknown actress before I've even signed on to the project because I need to make sure that I'm the number one in every capacity, and them agreeing to that.
It's so much funnier, like you said, if that's the unspoken thing in his head. Right. We, as the audience, are smart enough to understand that he'll be threatened if he's in a scene with like a great actress and they cast it with a great actress and she's getting all the laughs. I can understand why we would put the two and two together, that he's like, I don't like this.
That is the obvious way to go about this movie. And when you're watching a montage of 80 women mangle the easiest line in the world, which as you said, what the fuck? What do you mean no one can play this part? What are you talking about?
It's like the montage of like in High School Musical where like every kid in high school is bad, but it's like, this is Los Angeles. You can find a blonde woman who's a good actress. And you walk down the street.
Right. If at that point they had faced that much failure, they would not let him screen test a woman he met at a bookshop. They would say, I'm sorry, Jack, but needs to be an established actor.
But his power is not well defined. We just don't really know. So, look, what follows is he's a jerk for a while. Okay.
He sees her at a bookstore. She does the nose thing. He goes to her. Yeah. She doesn't understand what reading is.
She only takes this job. I think the important thing is what they try to establish with her is that she doesn't want everything to come easy. No, she's like, I don't want everything to come easy.
I want to struggle.
And he's like, being famous is great. You snap your fingers, anything happens. She's like, I don't want that.
Right.
So she doesn't want to be famous, doesn't want to be an actress. The only reason she does it is because she has a crush on him.
The only reason.
Even though he is the least charming man in the world.
She's not interested until he starts saying, we'll be husband and wife, which she takes at a literal level.
She's never met
because she's 12 years old.
Exactly. Yes. That's the thing. The whole way she's playing it is that she's never met a human before. He's showing interest in her, and so she's just like, well, she's bewitched by it. Anyway.
Right. At the screen test, she doesn't know how to read the script, but then she starts explaining her actual witch logic. And they think she's
they're like, oh, she's popping. Right. Yeah.
On the spot, they cast her.
It's sort of like Splash a little bit in that way.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's got a sexy Born Yesterday trope.
They treat it like Splash in a weird way.
So then it's like huge press conference. They built a set that looks like Lollapalooza. They're at some outdoor space where they're bringing her on stage and announcing her for the first time. Everyone's reporting on it, only to reveal 20 minutes later that this is the pilot, that they haven't even gotten a series order, that they're doing this sort of like promotional song and dance just for the pilot.
It's not even upfronts yet.
Yeah, it's not even upfronts.
They haven't shot the pilot yet.
We have to move through because after this nonsense, she gets sick of him because he's mean. There's a whole rigmarole, but then the end point of it is she's sick of him because she's mean.
He won't let her score. She has no lines.
She overhears him talking to Jason Schwartzman about how they tricked her into having no lines.
Because she's having fun up until that point. She doesn't realize that she has nothing to do until they tell her she has nothing to do in a movie that has given her almost nothing to do for the last 45 minutes.
And then it is revealed that even though Bewitched is fictional, Aunt Clara and later Uncle Arthur, minor characters from Bewitched, are real.
Yes.
I guess. They're the only ones who are real.
Right.
They do exist. Like, Endora does not.
No, she's got a father. She doesn't have a mother.
Yes,
who
she
is
has a
like
father
Endora.
who's not
Her
from the
father's
show.
an entirely different character type, except the actress playing Endora also is a witch. So you have one relative witch who is exactly like the character from the show, the same name, the same relation. Then you have Uncle Arthur, who seems to have magical abilities, but only appears to Will Ferrell and never interacts with the real witch in it.
Maybe they hint that he might just be in Will Ferrell's mind.
Maybe, but then who's driving the car? Like, is he having a full
who is
Fight Club
Aunt
mental
Clara?
breakdown? Who's Aunt
Who's
Clara?
Aunt Clara?
Aunt Clara, played
Whose
by
sister
Carol
is
Shelley.
she?
Yes.
She's not Endora's sister.
No.
And she is like, oh, come on, I'll cast a hex and he'll be in love with you.
Yes.
And then the next phase of the movie plays out in which Will Ferrell is head over heels in love with Nicole Kidman and is only nice to her.
And this is Will, you can't go big enough. Anything you want to throw on the screen.
It's right. It's like more.
And they try to convince us as a woman that she is charmed by this instead of being immediately put off. Instead of immediately being like, oh, this is weird and bad and I will undo this in a second. They have them like go on a date and she almost kisses him and she's like, oh, this is what I want as a woman. I almost forgot.
So in a mid-film twist, almost on the level of Gambit, this movie proceeds for 15 to 20 minutes as, oh, the high concept premise now is that she's tricked him into being in love with her, and he's too nice of a guy, and he's too adoring, and that plays out for multiple scenes through to their flirtation and seduction and
25
minutes. Date, and maybe first kiss, almost their first kiss.
Almost first kiss, and then she pauses the movie, appears as a second version of herself looking at it and goes, this is too wrong. And the movie rewinds 20 full minutes and just goes, none of that shit you saw happened at all. We're just going to now proceed with some different things happening.
What's weird then is the character of Aunt Clara, in addition just to being wildly confusing in the plot of this movie, is entirely unnecessary and I think doesn't appear again. So it's like just
Michael
cut that whole
could
thing
have
out.
done that. Whatever.
It's too long.
I don't know.
It's too long of a movie. But that whole
It's
sequence
just so
is too
weird
long.
that they're like, we're going to do Bewitched. We can't do the actual show. We have to do a whole meta thing. But we have to have Aunt Clara. Like, what are the 8 conversations happening?
It almost feels like there was a legal obligation. Like, it's like you have to get the Kravitzes in there. They can be their real neighbors. Aunt Clara is a coincidence that she seems to be the same as the character.
It's one of those things where it's like, if we include Aunt Clara, we get 10% of Herbie Fully Loaded. It's just a deal we made.
There's
I don't like it.
Weird fucking thing because they're just like, we need to check every single classic character box in one form or another with no consistent internal rules of how they appear in this universe.
But here's the thing that I think is the most offensive of all the things in this movie from a storytelling perspective, okay? They have the hex plot. He's very nice. She's not into it. She rewinds.
Right, because there's a running joke. I just want to mention as well. There's a running joke where she keeps on confessing to people that she's a witch and no one believes her, including Kristen Chenoweth, who's a delivery woman, who's also a life coach, who turns everything into a song, be it a laugh or a line of dialogue. She so badly wishes she was in a musical.
A role that was written for Kristen Chenoweth, I learned.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right, because I think she originally auditioned for something else. I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway.
I don't know.
Right, but then also Heather Burns, who is like the writer's assistant or the producer's assistant, but then becomes her closest friend who teams up with her to help her destroy the show. She just casually, now that Aunt has appeared out of nowhere, covered in soot, and the area surrounding her chimney is suddenly dirty, and she's been telling them she's a witch forever, and they keep on taking it not at face value, incentivizes them to join into a hex with her. They wear classic pointy witch hats and stand around a cauldron.
They imply that Aunt Clara hexed them to get them on board with the hex.
To do a hexing. There was a pre-hex hexing.
All right. So after the hex is taken back, and Will Ferrell is no longer obligated by magic to be nice.
And Aunt Clara has nothing to do anymore. Aunt Clara only existed for the movie to have a 20-minute detour.
We go back to the scene where Will Ferrell is given the ratings where like she has tested really well and he's tested really poorly. And the first time he reacts to that with like positive energy. This time he's mad.
That's the joke. You expect he's going to flip out, but he loves it. He's so happy. He wants her to score.
This time we see him flip out. He gets mad. There's a big fight and he fires her and she pulls a "you can't fire me, I quit." Okay?
Yes. but she also dresses him down in front of the whole.
Yes.
And then he comes after her, and he's like, "No one's ever done that before. This is great."
No, I'm sorry. No, what is this? You can't give me a fourth character update where it's like, and that makes him behave normally. Like, it's clearly just a thing of like, well, now we need to start getting to the end. So I guess he's going to have to be a human being again.
But then you pause the movie and you go, wait, there are 50 minutes left.
Yeah, right.
But the weird thing also is they had sort of established that he was a nice guy beforehand.
Right.
And
For
it was
1
Jason,
minute.
and it was Schwartzman. And like, this movie could have worked if he was a sad sack the whole time who's so insecure that it sort of makes him an asshole, but he's just an insecure sad
That's
sack.
the thing.
Like,
The Hollywood daring you to become an asshole. That's almost something. And every time he pulls away from assholish behavior, he goes to Schwartzman. He's like, "Are you sure? Are you sure this feels unnatural?" And that movie also would necessitate a twist that Jason Schwartzman's character is Satan himself, who has long been waged in a war with the witches. Like that's almost the only way this movie makes sense.
Which they sort of imply at the end a tiny bit.
A tiny bit.
A tiny bit. They make a joke about it, but you're like, oh.
But then it's like another montage after we've seen this montage of them falling in love. That is Farrell saying, "I'm going to stay overnight on the set with you, and I'm going to teach you everything I know about being a comedic actor."
Even though she was being great before. She was getting great ratings. She could deliver a funny line. She had no problem being a comedic actor. She was naturally pretty good at it.
But he teaches her physical comedy. He's totally selfless and collaborative and hardworking. We need to be a team. This is a show about a marriage. And then they kiss. Now they have the actual first kiss.
It's bullshit. They have no chemistry. It's completely insane. Then it's like Nora's like, all right, time to bring in the ex-wife. Let's do 10 minutes of this.
Oh no, it's nonsense. She almost kills the ex-wife with a light, rewinds it, does another rewind, and then manipulates her brain into making her move to Reykjavik.
Right.
The also crazy thing you're saying is that you pause at this point and you're like, there's 50 minutes of this movie left. What finally, after all of these like arcs and turns, has established is like they like each other now. They had their first kiss. They're together. She hasn't told him that she's a witch yet. We need to get to that.
Right.
But that is the opening credit. That's like the opening narration of the original Bewitched. Like that has to be the
premise of Bewitched. Is Guy finds out post relationship that she's a witch, and the movie takes an hour to fucking get there.
Yeah,
more an hour 10. I think something like that.
That's
and
the
then
crazy
she tells
thing.
him she's a witch.
Crazy.
He has the "I'm a Clippers fan" line. This is all in the trailer of the movie.
Right. It makes it seem like this is the first 30 minutes of the film.
She does magic powers, and he lets out a big Will Ferrell scream, probably the biggest laugh of the movie, just because he's good at those.
But just to pause again, I'm sorry, but the Katie Finneran scene is the first time we find out it's only been a pilot, because he says, "Why are you coming around again? Did you hear that the show's probably going to get picked up?" And you go like,
you're too hung up on the pilot thing.
It's not even the pilot
The show's
thing.
not picked up yet? That's what's crazy. They didn't have a series order?
It's not even that. It's beyond that. It feels like at this point the movie has spanned 6 months of time. And you're telling me either they've been shooting a pilot for 6 months or this movie has taken place over like 15 days, which is insane.
I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question, both of you, Griffin and David. Do you think this movie would work, hypothetically, if it starts with here's a young actress who's been an unknown, who somehow magically got cast in this sitcom, washed up actor who they sort of have chemistry with, and the first moment of this movie is they have chemistry, they get cast, they get a big laugh, they're actors in this movie, and then she tells him she's actually a witch. Would this movie work?
Here's what's fascinating.
I mean,
it would work better.
Yeah,
absolutely, it would work better. I will also say I rewatched the trailer because I was trying to remember which were the big Will Ferrell joke lines they front-loaded in the trailer. The trailers for the movie were all structured that way. It was, here's the perspective of Will Ferrell. He needs the show to be a hit. They find this unknown actress, and then only after she's cast does anyone find out that she's a witch. The trailer, it's structured that you wouldn't find out. It makes you seem like the movie wouldn't tell you that until after.
Which would work better because that's how the sitcom is structured, where they meet, they fall in love. She doesn't do any witchy things to make them fall in love. It would be almost funny if they imply like, wow, this beautiful unknown actress, it's so hard to make it in Hollywood. Did she have a little extra help?
But then they have this massive party that I guess is the wrap party for the pilot.
No, it's something even worse. He just throws a party. Is it because he fires someone?
Something went well?
It's not a wrap party. On set, something happened, and he goes, let's have a party at my place.
It's to celebrate his divorce.
Yes.
Right.
His wife signs the divorce papers, and he's like, let's have a party.
Correct.
It looks like a party that took months to plan. And here is where she's like, I need to tell you I'm a witch. Doing anything she can, any trick she can to show him. He keeps on taking them as you're an amateur magician.
Is Kate Walsh is at this party?
Yes. We also have the B plot at this point, which is Michael Caine, who's mostly been existing in the film to tell her to stop using magic, now is in love with Shirley MacLaine, the actress, who the comedic premise that seems to be set up is she thinks that her and Nicole Kidman are similar in terms of being weird, that it's weird actor diva tics, which Nicole Kidman interprets as, oh, you're a witch as well. Michael Caine is attracted to her, wants to use his magic to fall in love with her, and now an hour and 10 minutes in, we're finding out, no, Shirley MacLaine is also a witch, and now is using magic to stop Michael Caine from fucking other women.
Yeah,
then we get to the scene, David, that you talked about where Will Ferrell screams.
He scream loud, and it big scream, and trailer put in trailer, and he says he's a Clipper fan, and she flies away, and he waves a stick at her.
Mm-hmm.
He waves a branch at her.
Waves that branch.
And so she's gone, and I guess that's when they're like, let's recast her.
Yeah.
And then he disappears to Mexico, but we don't see that.
Right, he's brought back in by the police.
Which is wild, because the premise of the original sitcom is let's see two people deal with the fact that two people in love just found out that one of them is a witch. And this movie decides to just hand wave. They're like, we're not going to have fun with that at all.
Right. The witchiness tests the pre-existing strength of the relationship. In this movie, the second he finds out she's a witch, it's like, let's separate them. Let's make sure they're not on screen again together until the very end.
And not even show him dealing with it. Just have him be brought back by the police because he went on an existential bender.
Right.
But then she's not in the movie. We're all feral. He imagines himself being interviewed by Conan.
Yes.
And then he is visited by Steve Carell.
Well, because Steve Carell
Paul
appears
Lynde as Uncle Arthur.
Right. He is playing a magical manifestation of the actual character, not an actor playing Uncle Arthur. Uncle Arthur, who was his favorite character on Bewitched. Right. He is imagining that Uncle Arthur is there and that he curses him.
But I think also Isabel's uncle in this narrative.
I can't
I don't know.
Figure it out. Because at first it's, okay, the scene is Carell, who's right on that threshold, about to pop, gets the and in this movie. It's and Steve Carell in the credits.
He gets the and of course, yes, he'd been in Anchorman the year before, so it's sort of like putting Ferrell in fucking Wedding Crashers, right? It's like, look,
and
it's 40-Year-Old
Virgin is later this year.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But yes, it's like, okay,
but
so
Aunt Clara is her aunt. So is Uncle Arthur her uncle?
That's what I can't fucking...
I don't know.
Is the show based off of her family? Because she said she never watched it.
Because it was like blasphemy to her because she was a real witch.
But maybe it was because her parents didn't want her to know that they sold her life rights.
When she was an infant.
Yeah.
So to bring back Jim Carrey, it's the Truman Show.
Yeah. But the fake out of the Uncle Arthur
She never married Darren because it's not real. I'm going to throw something.
There's not a real Darren. There's not an equivalent.
You look really upset.
This is, for how many serious sci-fi movies we've covered on the show, this is the most perplexing internal logic of a film we have ever had to discuss.
We haven't even gotten into the fact that Stephen Colbert and David Alan Grier are both in this movie and it's like a law was passed that they're not allowed to be funny. It's like... Yes. You can only deliver expositional dialogue. That's it.
This movie has 3 different Daily Host correspondents in it. One of them is Carell, who's in a big 2-scene sort of cameo performance. One of them is Colbert, who's in so much of the movie, but with almost nothing to do, playing entirely straight. And one of them is Mo Rocca, who it just feels like is any day player on a TV as an Entertainment Tonight correspondent.
I swear David Allen Greer hosted a nightly show at some point, too.
He did. Chocolate News.
Yeah, there you go. Right, exactly.
Did you know that this very episode that we're recording right now, is brought to us by Mubi?
Mubi, they're back.
Our old friends at Mubi. It's been a while,
but
they're still here supporting our podcast. One of the best curated streaming services there is, showing exceptional films from around the globe. Now, there's a little bit of a new twist, okay?
Yeah, this is what I was going to say. Since they've been around, there's Mubi's gotten a little different.
Right, because you might go, oh, I know from Mubi. I've heard these ad reads before. Of course, every day on Mubi, they premiere a new film, whether it's a timeless classic, a cult favorite, an acclaimed masterpiece, a movie you've been dying to see, or one you never heard of before. There's always something new to discover. These films are hand-selected, so you're never going to spend more time looking for something great to watch. Because sometimes you can spend more time searching than you would actually watch in the movie. The thing with Mubi is
so they've got all that.
Make it like your own personal film festival, streaming anytime, anywhere. But here's the wrinkle, David. It used to always be...
This is the new wrinkle.
Every day, Mubi adds one film, and it takes one film away.
Right. They had a month's...
They're only 30 films. They're only 30 films. Each film's up for 30 days. That was the deal. But Mubi said, here's a new wrinkle. We also have a library. So the same sort of curation is happening. Movies going up, going down every day, 30-day runs. But they now have a larger library that's staying there forever. A lot of sort of classics, films that have been on Mubi many times before, are now available to watch indefinitely. Things like Old Boy, things like Dogtooth, things like The Turin Horse, things like Ida. We're talking about some of the biggest crossover hits the foreign art house of the last 10 or 20 years.
You got Junoon, the Paul Thomas Anderson documentary. That was a Mubi exclusive. You can watch that anytime. You can see, that movie Los Angeles Plays Itself. I feel like people keep bringing that one up to me. That one's
for a very
on
long
there.
time unavailable to watch. You have most of the Andrew Bujalski movies, if not all of them. I see Beeswax is up here. I see Mutual Appreciation's up here. Funny Haha up here. One of our favorite filmmakers. And you even got a little movie called The Color Wheel, directed by Alex Ross Perry.
Hey,
Past and Future.
That's a good movie. Yeah.
I mean, we got so many movies here. Dawson City, Frozen Time. You got Man with a Movie Camera.
They kicked it all off, that one.
Oh, the hours I could spend watching these films. The Toxic Avenger, Blood-Sucking Freaks.
Okay.
I mean, it's not all highbrow.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But I just got to make sure that people understand that they can try Mubi free for 30 days.
Free.
At Mubi.com/check. That's MUBI.com/check. You get a whole month of great cinema for free.
Metropolis, Nosferatu, The Last Laugh. The selection's so good, Dad.
Yes, it's great.
Get your free trial and watch all these good movies.
This movie sort of makes the commitment that if it looks like a Hollywood movie, like it's glossy enough, and they put enough funny people in it, it'll just by the war of attrition, it'll just be funny through sheer force of will. And it's not.
There's that thing that Roger Ebert always says where it's like, I run the internal test of, is this movie more or less enjoyable than watching the cast have dinner together?
Right.
Oh, that's genius,
This might be the greatest ratio of right? Where it's like, I would watch 1,000 hours of this cast not making this movie versus 1 hour of this movie.
Colbert, even Schwartzman probably has great stories.
Katie Finneran, Michael Battaluccio, he can regale us with tales of the practice.
But you're just like Kane and McClane doing old Hollywood
Amy
stories.
Sedaris, Richard Kind.
Kind.
Conan. You can bring in Conan.
Right. It's the ultimate example of just
Ed McMahon is in this.
All of it. The stories ever would have the bits. Yes. It's so goddamn insane. But this Uncle Arthur thing, right. Okay. He's backstage at Conan. He gets the reckoning from Uncle Arthur, the character he's talked about loving, explaining to him, you have to go, you have to run to her. Then he's like, I don't know what to do, runs out to Conan. Uncle Arthur has cursed him. He's naked. Okay, this is that moment. Except no, he wakes up it was a dream. It was his subconscious speaking to him, but he knows what he has to do. He has to run to her. Except no, he turns over in bed. Uncle Arthur is still real in this reality, or he's having a full-blown mental breakdown that is haunting both his waking and sleeping hours with the same figure. So then he gets in his car and drives to the Hollywood lot where Uncle Arthur tells him the rules that she's about to leave and go home to where she's from. And the rule of witches is that if you leave, you can't come back for 100 years. He can't figure out where she is until he realizes, oh, she's home. Because the real home for her is their fucking sitcom set where they've only filmed one pilot that apparently took 6 months.
And where he was mean to her most of the time.
Mostly a traumatic experience for her.
But there is a good gag in the pilot. Can we just shout out the when he has the big lobster claw? That's funny.
That's funny. I do laugh at that. It's funny.
And you also are just like, why am I not watching that fucking movie? Why am I not watching the movie in which Will Ferrell is sort of cuddly but kind of inept suburban dude dealing with weird magic
and play with the tensions about gender roles in the 90s. Yes. That's an using 100%. Bewitched gender roles metatextually to the 90s is an interesting movie that I would watch.
There is a version of this movie that probably still doesn't exist, that probably is still viewed as that was a weird point in Will Ferrell and Nicole Kidman's careers, but it's a Gentleman's Six. It's an ultimate cable movie. It's 100%. An ultimate, like, whatever. It's comfort food. It's just a TV show stretched out for 90 minutes.
It's middle of the pack Ephron rather than the worst thing she ever did.
But you are right. The joke of him with the lobster claw is funnier than any actual joke in this movie.
Yeah. Right. It's not good. Right. That's the thing. It's like 30 Rock correctly knew that the show they were making was irrelevant and probably not very funny.
Yes.
Bewitched, anytime you see a glimpse of the show, you're like, I don't know, maybe this is worth watching.
I'd rather watch this. Its use of magic seems more interesting to me than the real world uses of magic behind the scenes.
Well, the crazy thing to me with all the whiffs and wild things that this movie does is they try to make it so that she's like, I shouldn't use magic for no reason. Even though she does things that like violate all rules of space and time, where if they want there to be consequences of magic, which this movie seems to sort of want, they could do that, but they don't. Magic has no consequences in this universe.
No, absolutely. She learns no lessons from using magic, and there's also no kind of like cliched ticking clock thing of like, if you fall in love with a human, you have to give up your magic powers. Are you sure you never want to have magic again?
The arc that that Isabel, the Nicole Kidman, Oscar winner Nicole Kidman's character goes on, is she moves out, decides that she doesn't want to use magic, has a crush on a boy who's an asshole, falls in love with that boy, and continually uses magic.
The biggest sort of satirical angle Nora Ephron is bringing to it is if they rebooted Bewitched today, it probably wouldn't even be about the witch. They would find a way to make her as insequential as possible to the show. But she is at the same time doing that to the character who is having that done to them in the show within the movie. Like, it is crazy how little interiority, how little agency this character has, how little screen time she has relative to Ferrell.
And what you think they're almost trying to do is say, all right, in the 1950s, 60s, the woman had less power than the man in society.
Yeah.
And on a Hollywood set, the unknown has less power than the established movie star. And I guess that could cause some tension. But they don't interrogate that beyond just putting it on the canvas and saying, like, there, we did it.
There's a Meryl Streep quote, which I've invoked before on this podcast, but where she said that you look at, like, the 40s and the 50s, and women were very strong and tough and equal co-leads with agency who would give it as hard as they took it in, like, all those screwball comedies. And men did not feel threatened by it as audience members. They would watch something like His Girl Friday, and they would not say this is an agenda being pushed down my throat.
Which is a movie we talked about, in which the woman is so strong and so powerful that that's her whole thing.
That was not viewed as a threat. But what Meryl Streep said is, men feel more threatened by that today because it is closer to reflecting an actual reality. At the times in which those power dynamics were on screen, it was like, well, Katharine Hepburn can be like a ball buster because in real life she can't actually tell me what to do, you know? And now men feel more threatened by it. And as you're saying, yes, that is slightly more of an angle for this movie to have. That, like, the idea of, well, you couldn't keep her at home anymore. You couldn't tell her that she can't have a job. Makes this character more of a threat if she has magical ability. But there are 8,000 different things this movie could have done that would have felt like Nora Ephron had an actual angle for why she wanted to make this, rather than Lucky Numbers had bombed really hard. It was a guaranteed green light. And a lot of, especially I feel like comedic filmmakers, if they've been working for long enough, are like, I don't know, I'd kind of like to make a movie about how show business works, because they're filled with such contempt for how stupid the industry is that they think they're going to be the one who makes the take that mainstream audiences give a shit about. And almost always people go, inside baseball, I don't fucking care. I don't fucking care.
Bewitched. At the end, they fall in love. I don't know. I don't have anything else.
And then they move in. Then they move into the house from Bewitched, and then the neighbors from Bewitched are actually there, and it's Richard Kind and
Amy Sedaris and Richard Kind, and I'm immediately like, oh, Forky was literally like, oh, Amy Sedaris, and I was like, credits are about to roll, my friend.
Yeah,
That's all we're getting
in this from the beginning.
It would be that made me seeing Amy Sedaris and Richard Kind as the neighbors who I like remembered from the original Bewitched. So was so charming and nostalgic and fun for me that even if I would be like, I want that movie, please. At the end of this movie, I was like, this is where the movie should have began.
So it literally should have been the opening after the credits is, oh, who are these neighbors moving in next door? They're newlyweds.
You know what this movie? Yeah, this movie should have been two actors who. They just get married. She's an up-and-coming starlet. He's sort of in the decline of his career.
Yeah.
They get married. I'm a witch. Opening credits. Here's the movie. And the power dynamic could be that her career is becoming more successful than his, and he's threatened. That is an issue that women working have today, that men, when they start dating you, are more powerful and then get in a lull, and then they are not okay with that relationship dynamic anymore.
But as you said, the central metaphor of the series tracks well onto that, of just like she has more power than he does, literally. She's magical and he feels threatened by that.
Give us Amy Sedaris and Richard Kind as wacky neighbors. That sounds like a delight.
And make like the show sitcom that they work on not Bewitched.
I don't think Kidman is good in any version of this. And again, no offense to Nicole Kidman.
I don't think she's necessarily the right casting.
You know what?
I think she's just badly cast.
Who? God, I'm trying to think of like who.
Amy Adams.
Is she too serious?
No. Think Enchanted is 2 years after that.
Okay, I was thinking more like Amy Elizabeth, like Elizabeth Banks, but she might be too broad.
Banks would be great too. I think Adams is right before she gets big enough to be playing this role, but would have worked in it.
The same. This is the year before Talladega Nights.
I think
Talladega, of course.
Kidman is too innately dark. Like, that's where her mind lives.
She's not funny. I have no beef with her.
She and Will Ferrell live in two different universes. I think before recording, we were talking about how they're the exact same age. But to me, it's like when people are like, it's like people who are like, oh, did you know that Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were born the same year? You're like, I think of those two people never intersecting. That's how I feel about Will Ferrell and Nicole Kidman.
It's the same thing where you're just like, but she was already like married to Tom Cruise and hosting SNL 8 years before he got on the cast. They're clearly from different generations. And it's like, no, she got successful very young and he didn't get really big until later.
But also their comedic styles, their actor personas just don't intersect in any way.
What a fucking bizarre goddamn movie. I think this is one of truly the weirdest films we have ever covered and one of the blank checkiest movies we have ever covered.
Because it looks expensive.
It looks expensive, and it's also just, it feels like, I mean, we're talking about it coming out of, we just need to make some Bewitched movie, but this one feels like they're literally writing the script in real time. Like, in the Nochka episode of your podcast that I recorded, Dana, I was talking about how much I love in, like, the best comedies of the 40s, like the Lubitsch and the Sturgis movies, they're not concerned with sort of like, Act 1 has to be entirely this, Act 2 has to be entirely this, we're stalling for time, we're putting off the conflict being resolved. That every 10 minutes they'll introduce a new conflict. But the way that happens is organic. It is following the logical interior, lives of the characters and what they would do next. This feels like a movie where every 10 minutes they go, fuck, this is running out of steam. What's a new thing?
Yeah, what's a thing we can do to fill time?
What's a thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Let's play the box office game.
Let's play the box office.
I didn't expect to get so angry about this movie. I thought I was going to not talk
a fiasco.
a lot. Oh my God.
It's a fiasco. And it's Nora's. I mean, we haven't seen Lucky Numbers yet at the time of this recording. It's the one we've done out of order for this miniseries, pretty much. I'm a big Adam Resnick fan. I'm assuming I will find a lot more to like in Lucky Numbers than I do in this. But her flops are not fiascos in this way. And you can always see, I get what she was trying to do, and she couldn't pull it off. This, I just cannot even figure out how she explained this to friends while she was working on it. Like, I was running that test of, like, imagine being at a dinner party with Nora Ephron and going, Nora, what are you working on right now? And her going, Bewitched. And they go, oh, great, I can see that in my head. And she goes, well, but not exactly. And she tries to explain this to you over drinks.
I'm fine up until Aunt Clara. That's when it breaks me.
That's when the movie breaks.
Aunt Clara definitely is when the movie completely shatters.
And then I think the double reverse reveal of McClane being a witch is a further.
But that's where you're like, no, excuse me, I need another movie for this if you're even going to begin this. Whatever.
Right, you have to say this for movie 3.
But it's right around the same time as rumor has it, where Shirley MacLaine is dropping into movies as like meta characters.
Yes.
Anyway.
This
movie came out June 24th, 2005. I definitely saw it at the AMC Fenway by myself. And I also, because I saw so many movies that year by myself, and I just would see anything, I think I saw the trailer for this movie like 100 times. I think it's why I keep referencing it.
Yeah. Who must?
Number one, Griffin, is a movie I saw multiple times at the AMC Fenway. It's one of the big hits of the summer. What is it?
Where's the AMC Fenway?
AMC
Boston.
Fenway.
You're working at the Boston Globe at this point in time? Okay.
Boston Phoenix.
Okay.
Sorry.
So it's in Fenway Park. You're seeing movies projected.
It's very near. It's opposite.
Next
Fenway
to
Park.
Wally the Green Monster.
It's on the Green Monster.
That is where the Phoenix used to be headquartered. Yes, right next to Fenway.
I used to have a Green Monster shirt because I hated sports, and when I would go to sporting events with my dad and my brother, and he offered to buy merch, I would buy whatever merch had a cartoon character on it. Because I was like, I don't care about players. So they had a shirt that was like the Green Monster, like anthropomorphized with a face. And I would get such shit as a kid in New York wearing that shirt.
Well,
like people would like fucking throw shit at me. And I'd be like, I like that he's got googly eyes. This means nothing to me.
Griff, were you a Yankees family or a Mets family? Or none?
No, my dad, father, and grandfather were big Mets fans. And I wore a Yankee hat a lot because it was a hat that I owned.
Because you wanted to look like Zoe Deutsch and set it up. Okay?
Right.
Just admit it.
I did.
We've probably set it up so many times on
I know.
I just love to bring up that she goes to the Yankees.
It's so good.
You got set up.
It's so charming.
But I was more Yankees for no reason. I guess I liked that logo and the colors more. I didn't care about anyone's games. The men in my family all liked the Mets.
But you did shut down production on Gone Girl for 2 weeks because you refused to wear a Yankees hat.
Listen, if I wear a Yankees hat, my skin melts. That's just how it works.
My version of that was Fever Pitch. They fired me off of Fever Pitch because I refused to wear a Red Sox hat. I care
the
about
amount of times I have seen Fever Pitch. Sorry, let's get back to the box office.
Yes. My brother's favorite movie.
What
My brother's favorite movie
was number one? Your brother? I thought your brother's favorite movie was Ali.
I'd say that's top 5 for him.
Okay, fine. Okay.
There was a bit one year where 3 different members of my family bought my brother Fever Pitch on DVD because we were like, I don't know what else to get him. He watches that movie incessantly.
Okay.
So he already had access to it. Why did he need
He was
DVD?
watching it on cable every time it was on.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, David.
Number one at the box office, Griffin.
And he never opened any of the DVDs. They remain
Griffin, it's been number one for 2 weeks. I'm just going to
now I'm doing it as a bit. Okay, number one.
I'm sick of the bit. Number one.
First time that's ever happened on this podcast.
Number one. What, that I've been sick of a bit?
Yeah.
It's 2 weeks. It has a very good drop for a blockbuster. It's a big hit, but it's going to spawn much bigger hits.
It's a big hit,
covered it
but
on this podcast.
It's a big hit, but it's going to spawn much bigger hits. It's 2005. It's July or June?
This is late June.
This is late June. It's been out for 2 weeks. Is it, fuck. I'm trying to think of franchises.
It's not fuck.
It's not fuck. Fuck the movie. What is
Which I believe is a film from 2005.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
Documentary about the word fuck.
Is that a Kirby Dick movie?
Steve Anderson, I'm seeing.
Okay.
I don't know what to tell you.
Wait a second. I'm seeing. It's not a Kirby Dick movie. The director's name is Yoshi Penis. I'm sorry. No,
that I liked. That was fine.
And I won you back. Okay, wait. I'm trying to think. It spawns. What are franchises that start in 2005? It's not Fantastic Four.
This isn't the beginning of a franchise, but it is the relaunch of a franchise.
It's the relaunch of a franchise that gets bigger from here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And was the previous incarnation of this franchise a movie as well, or was it in a different medium?
I mean, there's so many versions of this franchise, but the last movie of this franchise is 8 years prior, and it's a movie that Andrew really loves.
Oh, it's Batman Begins.
That's right.
It's the Bartman Begins. I can't believe that took me so long.
Begins.
This is one of those ones where people are yelling. Yes, isn't that
That's
weird?
All right.
How different a time that was, where people were like, they're rebooting Batman? I don't know. It's been 7 years. Like, people might have forgotten about Batman.
Yeah, right. And when they tease the Joker at the end, people are like, I don't know. Nicholson played the Joker 16 years ago. I think it's too fresh.
Right. But also that movie like opens to 50, it ends up around 200, and people were like, yeah, it was like kind of like a sleeper. Like it like underperformed opening weekend relative to the previous Batman movies, and then had good word of mouth, and it like stuck around, but it was very expensive, and they weren't even sure if they were going to make a sequel. They were like, I don't know. They were like running the calculus on like, if the second movie does better, we'll make a profit. This one we kind of evened out. So insane. Yes, the Bartman Begins.
It is insane. And Bewitched, I suppose, in a perfect world would have knocked it off its top, but it was a bit of an underperformer. But it did open at $20 million.
This is a crazy thing. You look at any sort of big comedy starring a big star from this period, by and large, opens to 20. Like, it's just like automatic.
Right.
Like Land of the Lost
like,
also opens to like 20. These movies that you think of as like huge flops. And those,
Land of the Lost. It's another movie that was, the trailer was just all feral screaming.
Matt Lauer, right.
Matt Lauer, take that, Matt Lauer, or whatever. Yeah. In your face, Matt Lauer.
In your face, Matt Lauer.
But these movies just like, I don't know. You make an easy 20 million opening weekend. The question is how you multiply.
Number 3 at the box office is a big hit of the year. I'm sure we've talked about it many times in various box office games. It was sort of like a... Jesus. It's an action movie, 2 big stars.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah, okay. I don't need to do any more, do I? One of the big 05s.
Yeah,
not a good movie.
I think it's fine.
I think it's fun. It has its moments. They have chemistry, at least.
They have chemistry. I just think Pitt is so like dialed out of that movie. He's like, I haven't seen it in many years.
But in his defense, very handsome.
Very handsome.
Very handsome. Although I've never been the biggest fan of very close, the crew cut,
the shaved
sort of shaved. Yeah. Not my favorite Pitt. I like his hair long.
I agree he's hotter with long hair. At that point in time, I thought he looked so hot in Mr. and Mrs. Smith that I was like, oh, that's the key. If I shave my head, I'll be hot. And I shaved my head and I was like, no,
I'm not Brad Pitt.
I have my face. My head is not as well shaped as his.
It's better.
David, what's number 4 at the box office?
It's a movie that I mentioned earlier as a joke, and I believe I mentioned it because I had looked at this box office. It's a reboot, or whatever. I guess it's a reboot of an old franchise. It has a big star of the time who is pretty much cresting. This is kind of the end for her. One of your favorite actors is in it.
One of my favorite actors is... Oh, it's Herbie Fully Loaded.
Yep.
Starring Lindsay Lohan and Michael Keaton.
Which is the last Lindsay Lohan film aimed at young people, correct?
Michael Keaton is in that movie?
He plays her dad.
He plays
That
her
was
dad.
He
the
wasn't
wilderness
Herbie.
years.
That's the wilderness, 100%.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. She does not make another movie aimed at even teenagers after that.
No, her next film after that is Just My Luck, where the pitch was she's going to play a grown-up.
Right. I guess
That's her
that
and
one is still
Chris
basically...
No, it's her with Chris Pine.
Chris Pine.
Oh, I fell in love with Chris Pine in that movie.
He's very cute.
That was still a movie aimed at her young audience, but the difference is that's the first movie in which her parent is not a co-lead of the film. You know? Like where it's like, here's a woman with her own apartment and career, and she's falling in love in the city. And then that one underperforms. And then like at that point, the tailspin of all of the press had just sort of collapsed. Like her next movie after that is I Know Who Killed Me.
Oh,
there's also, you're forgetting Georgia Rule, my friend.
Oh, fuck.
You gotta think about Georgia Rule.
But there was that point where her entire career was Freaky Friday, Parent Trap, Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, Mean Girls, Herbie Fully Loaded. All of them were hits. She had only ever been...
Companion she was in.
Which I think she's very good in.
But that wasn't a hit.
She's fine.
No, it wasn't. But I'm saying up until that point, it's like she's only ever been the lead of a movie.
She's going up, yeah.
And she's only ever been in a hit. I think she's good in Prairie Home Companion. I like that movie a lot.
That movie's fantastic. She is fine in it.
I remember seeing Just My Luck, and the only thing I really remember about it as a teenager is falling in love with the British band McFly and falling in love with Chris Pine.
Pine
like,
in that and Princess
the
Diaries
hottest Pine.
too.
He's in Princess Diaries too.
The hottest Pine.
So weird to think about.
Yeah. That's one of those guys where it's weird that it took him that long to become a star.
He's so well, not in my mind. I was
sure.
I was a big Princess Diaries too.
That's what I'm saying. After Princess Diaries 2, I was like, give this guy every fucking part. What's happening here?
Oh, he's so charming. I have to show you the poster for Just My Luck because it looks like she's a Barbie doll. They couldn't get her for a photo shoot, clearly.
It looks like the life-size poster. Oh, wow. This is crazy. Are you looking at this?
It doesn't even look like her.
It doesn't even look like her.
No, it looks like Mila Kunis.
They couldn't get her.
Doesn't look
Chris
like,
Pine looks crazy. He looks like Ryan Reynolds.
He's so handsome though. His hair. He has that aughts hair.
I think it looks like Mila Kunis and Jay Baruchel. That's what this poster looks like.
He can kiss me and give me bad luck anytime. Which is the premise of that movie. Number 5 at the box office is another long-delayed sequel. The 4th in a franchise, but the last movie came out decades ago.
Last movie came out decades ago?
That's right.
It's the 4th in a franchise. The last one came out decades ago. 80s or even further back?
I believe the 80s. Let's double check, though. Why don't we double check? All right, we're going to double check.
Let's give it a little double check.
Yes, 20 years prior.
20 years prior. And does this one do well, or did they perhaps wait too long?
No, this one does well, and it was sort of heralded at the time as like, great, you made another one of these. That's great. And you made it on this big scale, and that's great. Like, and then they made more, and they were ignored.
And they made more, and they were ignored.
This movie's existence is sort of a weird little pop culture moment.
Is it a horror franchise?
Yes.
Fuck.
Yes, it is.
2005. This one does well. It's not Amityville Horror, is it?
Nope. Think like people were actually thrilled that this movie existed.
People were thrilled. They were thrilled. So it has to have been, is it like someone returning to the franchise?
Yes.
Is it like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's only his franchise, although there are many other like remakes and spin-offs of it, I suppose, or whatever. But he wrote and directed all 6 movies.
He wrote and directed all
to the extent that it's like X's title. You know, like it is pretty much billed with his name in it.
The fuck?
I feel like this is one where fans are just.
This was on the bracket. This franchise was on the bracket.
This is John Carpenter?
It has to be.
No.
It's not a Carpenter. It's not a Craven.
Zombie.
Oh.
There you go. There you go.
It's Land of the Dead.
Yes. George A. Romero's Land of the Dead.
A movie that
made
is
$20 million.
Perfectly fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's pretty good, right? It's okay.
Yeah. But yeah,
I feel like people were just like, good for you.
He got a blank check because the people who had been influenced by him.
Right. Were like, come on.
Right.
And it's sort
so
of
many things that ripped him off were becoming big hits. Yeah.
Yeah, like Shaun of the Dead or whatever. And like, so like, and I feel like it's the apotheosis of that like Fangoria type, fandom, right? There's a lot more of that out there at that point. The internet and the, Ain't It Cool Newses of the world, right? Like there's this sort of reverence for these old genre guys that, I don't know. It's just funny that movie was such a big deal.
He'd been canonized more than he had in a while. The Dawn of the Dead remake came out the year before, and that was such a big hit. He was supposed to direct the Resident Evil, the first movie.
Yeah.
Like, he kept on getting fired off of bigger films, and then all these filmmakers who had been influenced by him got big. And then, like, the online, like, nerd sphere was like, when are they going to let Romero actually make one of these movies? Then they saw it, they got really hot on it, and the other things had done well that they were like, we're so confident about this, we're going to pull up the release date. This was going to be a Halloween movie, and now we're releasing it in June, and it was a horrible decision.
Yeah, that was a bad decision. They definitely should not have done that.
They got way too
That was
confident.
an insane thing to do. Yes.
Insane.
Because it made $20 million, which is way more than any other Dead movie, but still,
Yes.
like,
It would have made twice as much in October. Yeah.
Some other movies in the top 10. Madagascar, your favorite.
My favorite.
Revenge of the Sith.
My favorite.
Your favorite. The Longest Yard, which of course is your favorite.
My favorite.
The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl in 3D, which I feel like might be your favorite.
I mean, legitimately a pretty good movie.
And then Ron Howard's Cinderella Man, which is just like the most like movie, right? The most like watched, 5 out of 10 thing.
We watched that in my AP US history class to learn about the Great Depression.
I mean, great.
Look, that is definitely that movie's greatest asset for society is as an educational tool.
Some other movies, oh my God. Opening at number 12 this weekend on 352 theaters is Dave LaChapelle's Rise, the documentary about crumping.
Wow.
Is there anything more 2005 than that?
Yeah.
I saw that in theaters. It was pretty good.
Do you remember just like seeing that first teaser for Cinderella Man that was mostly just the voiceover narration of him in the press conference over like slow motion imagery from the movie? And I forget, they used the score from some other big prestige movie.
Sure.
Over it. Oh, you know what it is? It's the one track from the end credits of Castaway, which is so good. The one Alan Silvestri credits track from Castaway, which rules. Because there's no score in the movie proper. But that trailer is just like his voiceover, the sort of Great Depression, like handsome August imagery, and then like from Academy Award winner Ron Howard and Academy Award winning writer Akiva Goldsman, Academy Award winner Russell Crowe, Academy Award winner Renee Zellweger, and then Giamatti is the one guy who hadn't gotten the Oscar anointment.
Can I tell one really quick Akiva Goldsman story?
Please.
It's the shortest. I'm so sorry. I was a freelance writer in New York at the time, and I think I was writing movie reviews for Marie Claire, and I was working on a piece about like the Stephen King Renaissance that was happening, and I think Akiva was producing like the man in the Gunslinger movie,
Dark Tower.
Dark Tower.
Yes.
But earlier I had seen Transformers: The Last Night to write a review about that. And that was the only Transformers movie I had ever seen. So I went in cold.
Makes a ton of sense if you're watching it cold.
I had never been more flabbergasted by a movie. It was truly a nightmare. Akiva Goldsman did the story of that movie. I clocked that he had the story credit.
Because he ran the writer's room. They were like, we're going to treat the next 10 Transformers movies like it's a season of television.
Yeah.
He's the showrunner in terms of generating ideas, and they put 10 people in a room with him who are all overqualified.
So this movie was awful and baffling and maybe the worst movie I've ever seen in the theater. And I was interviewing Akiva Goldsman about something else, and just really quickly at the end, and I was like, and I just have one, quick question about Transformers: The Last Night. Did it, turn out the way you wanted it to? I know with these big projects, they go through, was it your original vision? And he goes, I don't know how it turned out. I never saw it.
Well.
Fair
And
enough.
I thought, great, you should. It's a bad movie.
It's the Michael Caine question where they ask him why he did Jaws: The Revenge, and he said, "I haven't seen it. By all accounts, it's a horrible film, but I have seen The Weekend House I bought with it, and by all accounts, it's wonderful."
I love it.
And that, of course, is Bewitched's own Michael Caine.
And then we're done unless anyone has a take on The Perfect Man starring Hilary Duff and Heather Locklear.
It's a bug nuts premise for a movie. It's a movie in which a daughter catfishes her own mother to make her feel less depressed.
They try to make the guy from Superstore, I think, the romantic lead. A young, I can't remember his name.
Ben Feldman, that's right.
Ben Feldman
yes.
is the romantic lead. And I remember...
Is her love interest?
I remember even watching
He's
it
Duff's
at the
love
time
interest.
and thinking, nope.
Yeah.
And this is... my dad once called... Because, like, he's so Jewish looking and she's not that, like... But, like, I'm very... My dad once called me on the phone and told me that I needed to see the movie Obvious Child with Jenny Slate.
Sure.
Because, and I quote my father, her love interest is conventionally Gentile handsome, and he thought it would be good for my self-esteem.
Oh.
To see a Jew hooking up with Jake Lacey.
Yeah.
Who I believe she refers to as like a Christmas tree.
Yes. She's got some good burns on Jake Lacey. She
Yeah.
folds him like laundry in that movie.
Yeah.
I do just want to very quickly say, for those of you who don't know, the premise of The Perfect Man is Hilary Duff feels bad for her lonely Heather Locklear mother, so she catfishes her in online conversations.
She cyberbullies her own mother.
Right, and then when her mother is frustrated and wants to meet the man in person, she hires Chris Noth to act out the script she writes for him, Cyrano style. Insane.
You made me fall in love, I assume.
Of course they do.
Eventually.
She's flirting with her mom.
Yes.
Is what you're telling me.
Yes.
Great.
She's sexting with her mom. She's sending dick pics to her mom.
One
her
other
mother
thing
is falling in love with a man who speaks with the full intelligence of a 15-year-old's creative writing work.
One other thing I have to shout out is that also March of the Penguins opened this week on 4 screens. I just noticed that. And we
It would
talked
end
so
up
much
Beginning
about
of the
outgrossing-
Penguin Renaissance.
Would end up
Yes.
outgrossing Bewitched many times over. What was the final total on Bewitched?
The final total on Bewitched is a cool $63 million. Wow. 131 worldwide.
Oh.
I don't know. No one, it was probably okay, right? People probably could live with that.
Yeah, no one took a bath.
I don't know. Yeah.
They're all really
Not the
rich
most.
people, and I'm sure Nancy Meyers' home is lovely, and she didn't have to put a second mortgage on it.
What if a movie
Nora
bankrupted someone?
Oh my God.
I will say,
cut that.
obviously, an
I'm
easy...
clearly thinking about the Nancy Meyers kitchen at the
Well,
moment.
no. Also,
Nora
Dana,
Ephron,
we've been
Jesus
recording
Christ.
for more than 2
Always
hours,
thinking
and
about
it
that
fucking
kitchen.
fries your brain. But her kitchen in this is very Myers-esque. It's a great
Yes.
Myers kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
This is the Nora that
Bewitched.
feels most like a Nancy, but in the wrong ways.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah, because it's
worst
set in
ways.
Hollywood.
Yes.
And there's a lot of nice interiors.
Yes.
No,
This
Nora's
thing
best
lacks
in New York.
Nora.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's one of the big problems with this thing. Like I don't really see a lot of Nora Ephron in this.
No.
It's not that like I guess it's kind of trying to be biting about Hollywood, but like
But
it just
that
doesn't
is
have a
what I
lot of
think-
insight into anything.
But Nora
That's what
Ephron
makes it a fiasco rather than a failure. That's what makes this the lone fiasco of her career.
is it?
It's a
It's the
fiasco.
shoe. It's the shoe. Is that a reference to Elizabethtown?
Again, a movie
Yes.
I love. David, after losing your mind over this movie, what's worse? Elizabethtown or Bewitched?
Elizabethtown is worse. Oh, Elizabethtown is disgusting.
That is your
All
number
right,
one
this
least
is
favorite
gonna
movie.
be my bonus episode. We're going to review Elizabethtown
And
again.
no. Yeah. You'll
And then
come
we-
over whenever COVID is over. It can just be Dave and
The
Ange
first thing I'm gonna
on
do
the couch
is peel your eyes open.
watching Elizabethtown. It'll end with me going on a suicycle.
The real tragedy of this movie, in my mind, is that Nora is so good sometimes at genuine human chemistry and
Yes.
connection,
Yes.
and like feeling like two people who bicker have a spark. She's good at putting a spark on film, and this is like the anti-spark. This is like the spray that makes you not have static electricity on your skirts. It gets rid of all romantic chemistry.
There is
It's
a pull
it's amazing.
on the You've Got Mail Blu-ray I own that says Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan should win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. And in those
That's
terms,
a funnier joke than anything in
Absolutely.
Bewitched.
But in those terms, this movie is like building the atomic bomb. Like it's like applying chemistry in only the wrong ways. It's like hiring physicists to create a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah, that's
should have known better.
That's what's so baffling about it.
Dana, I hope you don't resent us making you talk about this movie.
No, I'm so sorry I got so angry about it. I didn't expect to be so animated.
It's hard to stay chill. I mean, it's a Bewitched challenge. Watch it for 2 hours and stay chill. Impossible. You can't do it. It's
you do a Will
impossible.
Ferrell scream yourself out of frustration.
Humus! Sherpa!
Humus.
He does yell Sherpa at one point.
He does.
Sherpa!
In one of his fake movies. Dana, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big Blank Check fan. This is a delight.
I'm sorry it took us this long to get ahead on the show. To get you on the show. I think people don't realize how far ahead we now plan compulsively out of fear.
This has been... I was actually going to come record this episode in person, but I had a trip to New York that was canceled because of coronavirus, a thing that is happening. I was like, I know this is sort of silly. It was so early on. I was like, they gave us a memo at work. We're not really supposed to travel. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience.
You were the first COVID cancellation of our podcast.
Right.
It was before the lockdown had happened, but when you were like, it doesn't seem like a great time to get on a plane.
It was in that last week where you were still like riding the subway, but still starting to feel like, is this fucked up? Should I be doing this?
I know.
That's
and
how I felt,
our thing was, but look, we hate doing podcasts virtually. I guess we have to find a new guest. If Dana can't come to New York anytime in the next 2 months, what are we going to do? Record the episode over a computer? I won't stand for one episode done that way.
It's been weird.
It's been weird. But Dana, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for letting me do it virtually.
Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. Thanks to Ange Fergudo for co-producing the show, social media, Rachel Jacobs for editing help, Lane Montgomery for our theme song, Joe Bone and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Go to blankies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit. Patreon.com/blankcheck for Blank Check special features. Where we do franchise commentaries. We're doing the Mission Impossible movies, and David is probably enjoying being alive temporarily for 2 hours at a time.
I've never seen any of those.
Oh my God. Dana, it's been the best quarantine watch. I highly recommend.
Do I start at the beginning? Do I start at the first one?
Of course, luxuriate.
We actually watched backwards and then went back to one. It doesn't matter. They're mostly all entertaining.
I think you can either start at 1 or start at 4.
Okay.
Yes.
I think those are the 2 entry points.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the first 3 movies are kind of standalones, and then 4 is when it starts to become a unified franchise.
Good to know. Thank you.
But nothing has pumped me up like hearing that theme song kick in.
Oh, it rolls.
3 is kind of episode 0 of the franchise.
Yes.
I'll just start at the beginning.
Just start at the beginning. This is way too convoluted. They're fun.
We're all stuck at home, and the world is going to end. Why not watch all of them? And as always, Uncle Albert does. I mean, he actually has a. God damn it,
Arthur! You blew it. Get out of here.
You had such
Uncle
a tee
Albert.
up.
But he drives the car, right? I mean, he does have an effect on our physical
Paul
world.
McCartney song, Uncle Albert.
Brad Pitt drives the car in Fight Club.
Let's just end the podcast. Let's end it forever. It's over.
It was so dark.
But yeah, all right. So I'm doing this now. So yeah, I mean, what was the? How did the involvement start? Like, where did that come from, if you remember?
It came from the very traditional channels, which was that heard they were making the movie Bewitched, and that there was a part of this agent manager type, and I thought maybe it would be I could try to do something with that. And I was excited because I wanted to work with Will Ferrell, who I loved. And so I really was, the first thing was just like, maybe I could work with Will Ferrell. I don't even know if I knew Nora Ephron was doing it. I don't.
Because she wrote the script, so it would have, come
so
with her name on it.
But no, but I didn't even hadn't read it. This is just hearing about it.
Right.
At this point. Then I got it. Then, basically, I was very excited, very nervous, and I remember going into the audition, which was at Sony, I believe. I went in, and and she was very nice, but I remember the second I sat down, I said something about a birthday, and then I don't know really much about, horoscopes and zodiac sign, but I said something like, oh, that's Gemini. I knew one of them because it was near my birthday. And she goes, oh, you don't really believe in that shit, do you? That was like the first thing she really said to me was, you don't really believe in that shit, do you? Which I thought was a great way to start the conversation.
Yeah, great icebreaker for your...
Yeah, I loved it. It made me so happy. I said, no, not really.
So you were in there to read or to meet?
To read, I think. I don't recall exactly. I won't try to... I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, well, good, thank you.
But I know that I ended up reading, but anyway, I just thought it was just such a, typically like to like my personality, typically like would, if I bump into like something like that, like you don't believe in that shit, do you? Like right up front, it's kind of like a roadblock, and I go, oh, never mind, I'll just go back. But I really, for some reason, with her, she just had a look in her eye and kind of just a smile, and I was like, oh, I understand why this woman is who she is. I mean, why she's so, well regarded and made so many wonderful. You just see it in her eye.
Yeah.
And anyway, then and she was a combination of like quiet and strong, and when she laughed, it meant a great deal to me.
Like the kind of person that, like, once you crack them up, then you feel...
Oh, I just wanted, because I liked her. I was such a fan of her work. And
had you seen Lucky Numbers?
Lucky Numbers,
which was the last movie at that time.
No, I hadn't seen it.
So the earlier Heartburn you're mentioning.
Oh yeah, I really love Heartburn, and her story and her, her whole story. But I hadn't seen Lucky Numbers, and I still haven't seen Lucky Numbers.
I think you're probably fine.
And I haven't seen Lucky Numbers by the time this comes out, but I will watch it at some point if you want me to.
I wouldn't. Having watched it last night, I don't know if I would say that you have to.
Oh, I'll do it if you want me to. Just tell me if you want. Anyway, but so and then then I told her. We started talking about, and the truth is, like, I was very nervous to go in. Like, I didn't really didn't really have such a concrete idea, like why could I be good to work with this person? Why do I deserve to get? But then I started to talk to her about. She brought up like the idea that a lot of these types of people that I would be playing, in a way, not to generalize, but have a kind of like not jock quality, but a kind of like, they're just that kind of like, kill or be killed in, out, just this kind of like this nature that she kind of pointed me in the direction to. I thought that was really interesting, just kind of like being like in the in-group kind of,
Yeah.
And then I told her a story about that a friend of mine told me, and then I actually think that I used it. I've used this bit actually later in something else, but which was that this person said they were having a meeting, and in the meeting, this person was interrupted.
I think is this the delivery of the?
Yes.
I think about this story all the time. All right, this is one of my
best.
top. Okay, so sorry, go on.
You know.
Because it's the best.
Right. So basically, just like this person, I was like trying to figure it out, and this person said, "Well, I'll tell you a story. One time, I was in a meeting with a person, and someone ran in with like an overnight FedEx delivery, like it had, just gotten there, and it tapped him on the shoulder and said, "It's here." He said, "Oh, great." Phew. He keeps talking, rips the package open, with that kind of like tear here thing, like one quick thing, and then held it upside down, and a power bar fell out into his hand.
I think about this all the time. Especially, I was going to text you because the other day, like an envelope from Amazon came that had Anna's name on it, and when she came home and opened it, there was a bag of Jolly Ranchers in it.
Oh my god!
And it made me think of this exact story, which I think of all the time.
Great.
So you told her that.
Well, I loved it because this was like he had obviously said to somebody, "Ship me a power bar."
Yeah.
Like it wasn't through a company. It wasn't through. It was like a personal delivery. Overnight me my power bar.
Right.
And I told her that, and she laughed a lot. And I said, "I don't know really what that means, but."
Well, she's right. That's one of the best stories.
I think that I was like, I don't know what this means, but that is the kind of person that I think I would try to portray. And then she said, "Great." And she was laughing and she was into it.
Yeah. So then was there anything that like...
And then... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, you go ahead.
Well, then I just loved her, like, when we were working. So once we were working, I just thought she was super... Just wonderful. Like, I thought she was great. I thought that she was... such like a great. She ran the set, made you feel encouraged, but also made you feel like you should try more. You know what I mean? She was not. It was like she really was. She had that beautiful ability to kind of push you forward without making you feel like you were failing before that. And also, I worked on that movie with Jim Turner and Stephen Colbert in that movie. They're like the two other guys that basically, me, Jim Turner, and Stephen Colbert had all of our scenes together with Will. And it was just such a, they were so funny, and just really watching those guys and talking about things, and the election was happening then, and hearing Nora talking about the election, I really felt like I was privileged to be there. I was sort of like, I really am not smart enough to be these people. So I quickly just fell into a role of being quiet and just trying to listen. But I do remember one day I walked over to get food at the craft service table, and there was this really nice spread of something. I forget, maybe it was cheese or something. And I was over there, and then Nora was over there. She came over. She was the only one, and she was just cutting little pieces of cheese and talking to me and asking me questions about my life, and just eating little pieces of cheese, and then walked away. And it was just, but it was like 15 minutes of just her sampling cheeses from a cheese board. And just taste little bites in with that little type of cheese knife. And then, anyway, then I had then later I saw her at a party years later, and it was, I hope this isn't bad. Well, I won't get into details, but basically, like, she said something that was so fun to me, which is that I had, when I knew her, when I was working with Nora, I had a girlfriend, and then by the time I see Nora by chance at this dinner party at this house, the girl and I are no longer together, and I was sad about it. And anyway, the first thing she said was, "Oh, how is so and so?" And I said, "Oh, we actually we broke up." And she was, "Oh, that's a shame. She was the best. What a great, And then she started telling everyone around, like, how great she was. Like, this girl could do this and this and this and this. And I was just like, yeah. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And just
so you didn't keep up. You would maybe see her around.
I saw her, yeah, but my whole thing, and just so sweet, but like coming out of nowhere to say hi to me, and just like I felt that. But what I felt was she has what I think, like I meant earlier when I said like a kind of smile and this thing, like when is that she's a super perceptor. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like she's picking up on so many things. And obviously, when you read her books, I mean, she has that eye coming from the writing.
No, we love those books. We love them.
Yeah.
Obviously.
They're great.
Yeah. So it was just, for you, like, someone that it was fun to just kind of get to hang out with and work with for a little bit, cross paths, and just say like, wow, that's kind of like an older, like an old school kind of intellect that I got to sort of as a young person brush up against.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was like I'm never really casual about it. Like, oh, I'm gonna try this thing, and like I was pretty. I felt pretty like. I'm here with these people, and this is really a big deal for me. And it's funny because it all stemmed really just from, Will Ferrell's going to do. I would love to work with Will Ferrell, and that was amazing. And I learned so much from him. Obviously, as you can see.
Yeah, I mean that's why you made 12 sports movies.
That's why I've done it. I mean that's why as you've seen, yes, it shows, it speaks for itself, his influence. But really. Getting to spend time with her and watch her direct. I watched her a lot. Because sometimes I'd be like in a scene where it's a dinner scene, a dinner party scene, and maybe I'm in the back, but it took 5 days to shoot it or something. You know what I mean? Because it's a big, huge scene and I had a lot of time where I wasn't on camera, and she was so cool. I just sat there and watched her, and I watched her work, and her just the way she was really great. But she'd probably be saying like, "Oh, that's bullshit" right now. She maybe heard me saying this.
Yeah. When you saw the finished movie, was it sort of what you had always pictured as it would come together? I haven't seen it in over 10 years. We saw it once years ago.
I haven't seen it in over 10 years either. But I just remember learning a lot from being there. I remember, like, Will Ferrell, he would run to the set every day instead of getting a ride.
Okay.
Which is amazing. Like, he'd run, like, 12 miles in the morning to get to the set.
Huh. Now that you mention it, that explains why you've always done that.
Right, that's where I got it. I got it from him. And he got it from Oliver Reed.
Uh-huh.
And now I hope to pass it on to the next, the next one of us.
Is there anything else that you want to put on the record here
her sister is amazing too. And their connection and working relationship is really fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm sad that she's not alive.
Yeah.
Because I think that she's rare to be I think such a keen eye and so smart and so and also able to make big movies and things. I think like it's nice.
Great.
Nice having her around.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna press stop on the recording now, but then I'm not going to hang up just yet. I'm going to say a few more things, but I'm going to stop recording right now.